I'm the Midnight Storyteller, here to keep you company through the quiet hours. Many of you listen to these stories to fall asleep, and I'm honored to guide you there. And before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps keep the stories alive. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? And what time is it on your side of the night? Now, get comfortable, relax, and let's begin. Detective Owen Marshall tapped his pen against the case file. A missing woman, a common case until he read the details. Julia Raines, 34, last seen 3 years ago. Reported missing by her husband, Victor Raines. Yet over the past 2 weeks, multiple people had seen her, grocery stores, cafes, even walking into her own home. Security footage from 5 days ago showed her entering through the front door. But when officers knocked, Victor answered, shaken, swearing Julia had never come back. Mistaken identity, a hoax. The reports were too consistent. Owen sighed, glancing at the photo clipped to the file. A simple, smiling woman. Dark eyes, high cheekbones, the kind of face easy to recognize. But something about the picture bothered him, a slight blur around the edges. Like the image was resisting clarity. He shut the file and grabbed his coat. He'd start with Victor Raines. As Owen stepped into the cold afternoon, he felt the strangest sensation, like something had been watching him from the reflection of his office window. But when he turned, it was only his own face staring back. For a moment, though, he could have sworn his suit was the wrong color. Victor Raines looked hollow, like a man who had spent years grieving but never quite learned how. He opened the door, eyes darting past Owen as if expecting someone else. "You're here about Julia," Victor said. Owen nodded, stepping inside. The house was neat but eerily still. No signs of a woman living here. No makeup on the counter, no second toothbrush. Only a single framed photo on the mantel. Victor and Julia on their wedding day. "You told officers Julia never came back," Owen said. "But the footage..." Victor's hands clenched. "I know what it shows. I know what people are saying, but it's not real. She's been gone 3 years. Owen studied him. "Gone how?" Victor swallowed hard. "I don't know." Something in his voice made Owen uneasy. He shifted, catching movement in the hallway mirror. A shadow there for a blink, like someone had just stepped out of view. Owen turned sharply. Empty hallway. "Mr. Raines, when was the last time you physically saw Julia?" Victor opened his mouth, then hesitated. His forehead creased. I don't remember," he whispered. A sharp knock at the door made them both jump. Owen opened it. A woman stood there, face pale, eyes wide with fear. "I saw her," she gasped. "She was standing outside my window last night." Owen's breath hitched. The woman's hands trembled as she held out her phone. The screen showed a grainy photo, Julia Raines. But her face was blurred, as if she wasn't meant to be seen. Owen stared at the photo. Julia's face wasn't just blurred, it was wrong. The edges of her features wavered, her eyes looked too dark, her mouth slightly misplaced like a puzzle assembled incorrectly. The witness, a neighbor named Dana Cole, swore she had seen Julia at her window. Not outside, inside, just standing there in the dark. "I blinked, and she was gone," Dana whispered, like she was never there. Owen checked the timestamps. The sighting was from last night, but another officer had checked Julia's old office yesterday. Security footage showed her at the front desk. She was in 2 places at once. Back at the station, Owen dug deeper into Julia's history. That's when the discrepancies started appearing. Her work history, dates were subtly wrong. Some years were missing. Medical records, conflicting reports. One doctor listed her as a patient, another had no record of her. Childhood photos, some had different dates. A school portrait labeled 1994 in one file was 1996 in another. It was like pieces of her past were shifting, rewriting themselves. A call buzzed on Owen's phone. No number, just a single word. You. He hesitated, then answered, a woman's voice. Hoarse, desperate. You're looking for me, she whispered. But they're making you forget. Click. Owen gripped the phone, pulse hammering. The voice, it had to be Julia. Before he could trace the call, the line went dead. Something was wrong with this case. Not just missing person wrong. Reality wrong. Following the inconsistencies, Owen drove to Julia's childhood home. A house that, according to county records, had been unoccupied for years. Yet the door was unlocked, the air inside thick with dust and something heavier. Like the house had been waiting. Owen's flashlight flickered as he moved through the dim rooms. Then in the hallway, he saw it, a door that shouldn't have been there. Peeling wallpaper hung loose around its frame, as if the house itself had tried to swallow it. Owen pushed it open. Inside, the walls were covered in frantic handwriting. I am real. I am still here. Please find me before they do. At the center of the room, a single chair faced a mirror. Owen stepped closer and froze. His reflection wasn't moving. It sat in the chair, wearing a different suit, watching him. Then his phone buzzed again. Same number, same name. You. Hands shaking, he answered. This time he heard his own voice. They already took her, the voice whispered, and now they're coming for. The line cut out. A sharp knock sounded behind him. The mirror Owen was standing now. Owen stumbled back. His reflection wasn't a reflection anymore. It stood in the room watching him with his own face. Then, his phone rang again. He didn't look at the screen. He already knew what it would say. You. He ran, out of the house, out into the cold night. His lungs burned, his mind screamed. The next morning, his captain met him at his desk, grim-faced. Owen, he said carefully, your wife, she's been missing for 3 years. But he had kissed her goodbye that morning, hadn't he? The end. The email arrived at 2:33 a.m. Subject, this story cannot be unread. Sender, unknown. Attachment, the unreadable story.docx. Daniel Foster, journalist, rubbed his eyes. The glow of his laptop screen pulsed in the dark room, the only light source apart from the dim street lamp filtering through his window. A spam email, probably. The kind conspiracy nut sent, he almost deleted it. But curiosity scratched at him. He had written about weird urban legends before. Some anonymous hacker trying to craft a viral creepypasta, most likely. He clicked the file. It opened on its own. The first words were bold, centered. If you comprehend this story, you will disappear. Daniel smirked. Dramatic. He scrolled. The formatting was off. Sentences misaligned. Paragraphs overlapping like a corrupted file. Then he saw his name. Daniel Foster is reading this sentence right now. He thinks this is just a joke. His smirk faltered. He blinked, heart knocking once against his ribs. He scrolled further. He just furrowed his brow. He is still reading. He shouldn't be. Daniel snapped the laptop shut. The room was too quiet. His own breathing sounded too loud. The next morning he convinced himself it was a prank. Probably an auto-generating text script. Some deep learning AI that predicted generic reader reactions. That had to be it. Still, his fingers hovered over the laptop before he opened it. His pulse quickened when he saw the screen. The document was still there. New words had appeared. You closed the laptop, but you are still reading. You are still in the story. Daniel's hands turned cold. He tried to delete the file. Nothing happened. He tried again. The subject line in his email inbox changed by itself. You cannot undo this. A thick, sick feeling curled in his stomach. He grabbed his phone and called Mike, his best friend. The call connected, but something was wrong. The silence on the other end felt too deep. Then Mike spoke. Who is this? Daniel let out a half laugh, uneasy. What do you mean, it's me, idiot? A pause. I don't know any Daniel, Mike said, his voice flat, unfamiliar. Daniel's blood iced. He pulled the phone from his ear, staring at the screen. The call disconnected. The air in his apartment felt thicker, suffocating. He turned slowly. His chair was angled differently. He was sure it had been straight before. Hadn't it? Needing air, Daniel left his apartment. Something felt wrong. The city was too quiet. Pedestrians moved a fraction too slow, their faces blurry at the edges, as if reality itself hadn't finished rendering them. At his office, he exhaled. Familiar walls, familiar desks, normalcy. But the receptionist's desk was occupied by a stranger. Daniel hesitated. Where's Lisa? The man frowned. Lisa, my editor, Lisa Carter, Daniel said, impatience creeping into his tone. The man's frown deepened. We don't have a Lisa Carter here. The floor beneath Daniel's feet felt unsteady. A cold sweat prickled his neck. You okay, Jacob? A voice asked. Daniel turned. A coworker, Amanda. Relief bloomed in his chest until she winced slightly at her own words, like she had said something wrong. My name's Daniel, he said, his voice shaking. Amanda's expression froze. A flicker of something. Fear. She leaned in, whispering, You're not supposed to be here. Then she turned away as if he wasn't there. Daniel's breath hitched. He checked his wallet. His ID said Jacob Evans. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone. A new text. No sender. You have read too much. Reality is adjusting. The office blinked. 1 second bustling with life. The next, empty. Daniel ran. His heartbeat pounded against his ribs. Back home, he slammed the door shut, gasping for breath. His laptop was open. The document was waiting. The words changed in real time. This is your last chance. If you read further, you will cease to be. Daniel grabbed the laptop and hurled it against the wall. The screen cracked. The file was still open. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Then his breath stopped. The caller ID, his own name. Message below. Do not answer. It's not me. Daniel froze. The phone kept ringing. The walls hummed, vibrated, as if they weren't walls at all, but something thin, a membrane between here and somewhere else. His hands tingled, going numb. His fingers blurred at the edges. The ringing stopped. Daniel gasped, opened his eyes. He was back at his desk. His inbox was empty. No strange emails, no manuscript. Had it all been a dream? He exhaled, pressing his hands against his face. Relief flooded him. Maybe he just needed sleep. Maybe his phone vibrated. One new message. No sender. You were never supposed to read this. You were never supposed to exist. The air left his lungs. He turned slowly to the mirror and froze. His reflection was gone. The end. Eric woke to the slow, rhythmic beep of a heart monitor. The sterile white ceiling above him pulsed in and out of focus. A dull, aching pain spread through his body, but he was alive. He had survived. The last thing he remembered was the crash, the sudden jerk of the steering wheel, the blinding headlights, the shriek of metal folding in on itself. Then darkness. A doctor stood at his bedside, flipping through a clipboard. His face was impassive, professional. "Good to see you awake, Mr. Reynolds," he said. Eric blinked. "What?" The doctor barely looked up. "You were in a car accident. We were able to stabilize you. You're lucky. Only minor injuries." "No," Eric croaked, his throat dry. "That's not my name." The doctor gave him a polite, measured smile. "Try not to exert yourself. You've been through a lot." Eric's fingers clenched the thin hospital blanket. Something felt off. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in his ribs forced him back down. "My name is Eric Matheson." His own voice sounded strange, wrong somehow, as if it had been recorded and played back at the wrong pitch. The doctor made a note on his clipboard. The door to the hospital room opened, and a woman stepped inside. Anna, his wife. Relief flooded through him. "Anna." She took one look at him and screamed. The sound sent a chill through his body. "Who?" She staggered backward, hands trembling, gripping the doorframe as if to steady herself. "Who are you?" Eric's stomach dropped. "Anna, it's me." "No," she choked out. No, this is wrong. What the hell is this?" She turned to the doctor, eyes wild. "Where is my husband?" The doctor let out a soft sigh as if he'd been expecting this. "Mrs. Matheson, I understand this is difficult. That's not my husband," she screamed, pointing at Eric. Panic swelled in his chest. "Anna, please." She ran from the room. Eric felt something inside him crack. "What's happening to me?" The doctor hesitated, his fingers tightening on the clipboard. "My fingerprints," Eric said suddenly, a sick certainty settling in his gut. "Check my fingerprints." A long silence. The doctor finally exhaled. "We already did." The room seemed to tilt. Eric swallowed. "And?" The doctor looked away. "They don't match, do they?" The air between them was thick, suffocating. Eric forced himself to breathe. "Give me a mirror." The doctor hesitated. "Give me a damn mirror." Slowly, reluctantly, the doctor pulled a small handheld mirror from a nearby tray and handed it to him. Eric's fingers trembled as he lifted it. The face staring back at him was a stranger's. It was close, eerily close, like an uncanny valley version of himself. The same bone structure, the same deep-set eyes, but his skin was paler, his lips thinner, his hairline just slightly different. His irises were darker than he remembered. A wave of nausea rolled through him. "This isn't me," he whispered. The doctor said nothing. Eric's breath quickened. He flung the mirror onto the bed, swinging his legs over the edge. He had to get out of here. He yanked at the wires and IV lines attached to his arms. "Where are my things?" The doctor shifted uncomfortably. "Your personal effects were recovered from the crash site. My phone, it was damaged. My wallet." The doctor hesitated, then stepped toward a small bedside table. He retrieved a wallet and placed it in Eric's hands. Eric fumbled to open it. His driver's license slipped into his lap. The name on it was David Reynolds. The face was his. A dry, suffocating feeling crept into Eric's throat. His hands shook. "No," he whispered. No. The doctor placed a hand on his shoulder. "You need to rest." Eric shoved him away. "Where is my real ID? My real records?" Silence. Eric scrambled for the hospital phone and dialed the only number that mattered. His fingers felt stiff, uncoordinated, as if they didn't belong to him. The phone rang once, twice, then Anna's voice, but it was quiet, small, broken. "I don't know who you are," she whispered, "but stop calling me." The line went dead. Eric sat frozen, the receiver still pressed to his ear. Then the hospital phone vibrated, a text message from his own number. "Stop asking questions. It's still inside you." His hands went cold. His real number, his real phone. But how? A shadow moved outside his hospital room's window. The doctor was watching him. Eric's pulse pounded in his ears. He turned back to the message. The words blurred as a fresh wave of nausea gripped him. It's still inside you. A tremor ran through his hands. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. And whatever it wasn't finished with him yet. The end. Rachel knew something was off the moment she pulled into Stillwater Drive. The neighborhood was the kind that real estate agents salivate over. Immaculate lawns, driveways free of oil stains, two-story houses that looked like they'd been stamped out of a mold. But it was too perfect. No sounds of barking dogs or distant radios. No shouts of kids playing. Just the whispering rustle of wind through trees. The silence clung to everything, pressing against her eardrums like cotton. Her new neighbor, a woman in beige slacks and a pastel sweater, greeted her with a smile so wide it hurt to look at. Rachel waved and said, "Hey there." The woman didn't speak. Her smile didn't change, but her head tilted just slightly. Rachel forced a chuckle. Tough crowd. The woman raised a hand, not in a wave, but in a slow, deliberate movement. Palm up, fingers unfurling, like a magician about to reveal a trick. Then she turned and walked away. That first night, Rachel slept poorly. Maybe it was the exhaustion of moving. Maybe it was the quiet. Too quiet. Even in her old apartment, there was always something. Traffic, neighbors, distant sirens. Here, the silence felt watched. At 3 a.m., she woke to the sound of a whisper. It came from the closet. They hear everything. Rachel bolted upright, heart jackhammering. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and shined it at the closet. The door was open. She knew it had been closed when she went to bed. She crept forward, peering inside. Empty. Just her hanging clothes and an old box of winter coats. The next morning, things were worse. She saw children playing outside. Jump rope, hopscotch, but their mouths never opened. Their sneakers slapped against the pavement, but there were no giggles, no chatter. Not even the rhythmic thump-thump of the rope hitting the ground. At noon, an elderly man on a bicycle hit a pothole and crashed. His body crumpled to the pavement in a heap. Rachel sprinted toward him. "Oh my God, are you okay?" He gasped, clutching his knee. Blood smeared across his khakis, but he didn't make a sound. His mouth opened in what should have been a groan, a cry for help. Nothing came out. Rachel turned to the nearest house, waving frantically. "Somebody help." A woman stood on her porch, staring, smiling, saying nothing. Rachel stumbled backward. The old man's lips moved, but the only sound was her own ragged breathing. She ran home, locked the door. That night, she pushed a chair against the closet door. At 3:01 a.m., a whisper slithered through the darkness. "They hear everything." The chair hadn't moved. The closet door was still shut. Rachel shoved her fist against her mouth to keep from making a sound. The next morning, she stepped outside and nearly fell over. A woman stood in her driveway. Rachel's clothes, Rachel's face, identical in every way. Rachel staggered back inside, slamming the door. She bolted to the window, heart hammering. The woman still stood there, hands clasped in front of her, smiling. She wasn't alone. Everywhere she looked, every driveway, every porch, versions of herself stood watching. She clutched her head, stomach twisting. No, this isn't real. Her hand shook as she reached for her phone. She tapped 911. No static, just silence. Rachel ran to the back door, but when she yanked it open, she was already standing there, waiting. Same face, same brown eyes, same trembling fingers. Rachel staggered away. Her duplicate stepped forward in perfect unison, blocking the exits. Panic crawled up her throat. Noise. She grabbed a glass off the counter and threw it against the tile floor. Crash. The effect was immediate. Every single person on Stillwater Drive snapped their heads toward her house. Hundreds of eyes. Hundreds of identical smiles. Rachel backed into the living room, legs shaking. A whisper drifted through the open windows. Now you understand. Her breath hitched. Now you must be silent too. She clapped her hands over her ears. The entire neighborhood began moving. A slow, unnatural glide, feet barely lifting off the pavement, heads tilted at the same eerie angle. Rachel bolted upstairs, slamming the bedroom door behind her. She pressed her back against it, sucking in gasping breaths. No, this wasn't happening. She needed sound, something. She grabbed the bedside lamp and threw it against the wall. The entire house seemed to exhale. The whisper rose to a deafening chorus. Now you must be silent too. The windows burst inward, shards of glass raining down, 100 voices in perfect harmony. A whisper that wasn't a whisper anymore, but something inside her head, drilling into her skull. Rachel's vision blurred, her knees buckled. The closet door creaked open behind her. Inside, darkness stretched impossibly deep. Not a closet at all, but a void. She turned and she was there, her twin, the Rachel in the driveway, the Rachel at the back door, identical, smiling. The silent ones. Her doppelganger stepped forward and Rachel tried to scream. But nothing came out. The thing that looked like her touched her face, tilting her chin up like a child being shushed. Rachel's lips parted, and then, without making a sound, she disappeared into the dark. The next morning, a moving truck pulled up to the empty house on Stillwater Drive. A young couple stepped out, stretching, grinning at each other. "It's so quiet," the husband said, looking around. The real estate agent smiled. "Isn't it wonderful?" In the driveway, Rachel stood watching them. She was smiling, and she said nothing at all. The end. The last train of the night always felt different. Not in any way a passenger would notice. But after years as a conductor, Marcel Davis had learned that the final run carried a certain heaviness. The hum of the steel tracks, the flickering overhead lights, the rhythmic shudder of the cars, all of it seemed slower, as if the train itself was tired. Tonight was no different. Mark stood in the empty front car, adjusting his cap, waiting for the familiar jolt as the train pulled away from the station. The route was routine, a commuter line that stretched through quiet suburbs before vanishing into the dark countryside. Most passengers were either half asleep or buried in their phones. Some just stared out the windows, watching the night blur by. A voice crackled through his radio. "Hey Mark, got a weird one in car 4. It was Jerry, the assistant conductor. Lady sitting alone. No movement. No response. Ticket just says not listed." Mark sighed. Probably another commuter who had too much to drink or someone who'd boarded the wrong train. Nothing unusual, except when he reached car 4, the seat was empty. Mark scanned car 4, empty rows. The dim yellow light flickered above, casting long shadows along the floor. The last row, where Jerry had said the woman was sitting, was completely vacant. He clicked his radio. "Jerry, I'm here. No one's in car 4. Silence. Then static. She was there a second ago. Jerry's voice was distorted, cutting in and out. Passengers saw her too. Mark exhaled through his nose. Probably a mix-up. Maybe the woman had moved to another car. He turned to leave, then stopped. A faint pressure tingled at the back of his neck. That feeling, like when someone is watching. The air felt too still. He shook it off and walked back to the front car. By the next stop, the train had more passengers, and the odd report should have faded, but it didn't. A woman in a blue coat, last row, not moving. Different passengers, same description. Mark searched car 4 twice that night. Nothing. But then, the next morning, he checked the lost tickets in the office. One stood out. A single stub, slightly crumpled. Under destination it read, "Not listed." His fingers tingled, a cold creeping unease curled into his chest. That ticket hadn't been there last night. The reports didn't stop. Every night, different passengers. Same story. She was just sitting there. Didn't move at all. I saw her in the window reflection, but when I turned, she wasn't there. Mark stopped dismissing it after the 3rd night. He started checking the security monitors in real time, scanning car 4 between stops. Nothing. But the moment he turned his back, "Hey conductor, there's a woman back there." He would turn, stomach twisting, but always find empty seats. It got worse. One night, during a break at a quiet station, Mark took a long look at the window reflections. The train was mostly empty. Just one man near the front, tapping at his phone. But in the reflection, someone sat in the last row, a still shape, a blue coat. Mark's breath hitched. He spun around. The seat was empty. He turned back to the window. The seat wasn't empty in the reflection. The air in his throat turned solid. Then the figure shifted, just slightly, like it had noticed him. The train lurched forward. The reflection vanished. Mark stood frozen, hand clenched at his side. He needed to check the security footage. Mark sat alone in the control room, watching the security footage from last night. His breath felt tight, his fingers cold against the keyboard. Car 4, 12:42 a.m. At first the seats were empty. Normal. Just a lone businessman near the front staring at his phone. Then, movement. The last row, she was there. A woman in a blue coat, sitting completely still, hands folded in her lap, face just a blur, as if the camera refused to capture it. Mark's pulse pounded in his ears. He hit rewind. Watched again. She never boarded, never walked in. One frame, the seat was empty. The next, she was there. His hands felt slick with sweat. He scrubbed forward in the footage. Watched passengers board and sit near her, but none reacted. No one saw her. Then, at 12:58 a.m., she turned her head. Not a normal motion. It was glitchy, like bad reception. A blur of pixels twisting toward the camera. Mark swallowed hard. Then in the next frame, he was there too, standing behind her seat, staring straight at the camera. Mark shoved his chair back, heart slamming against his ribs. He had never walked into that car. The footage distorted. Static swallowed the screen. Then, black. Mark barely had time to breathe before his phone rang. His supervisor, urgent news. They had found a missing conductor, dead, sitting in that same seat, wearing a blue coat. Mark didn't answer the phone. He couldn't. His reflection in the black screen of the monitor wasn't moving. He stood, breath shallow, and turned slowly to the window beside him. Outside, the train sat still in the night, darkened glass reflecting the empty control room. Except in the reflection, car 4 wasn't empty. The last row. A man sat there now, his own uniform, his own face. The phone buzzed again, but the figure in the reflection, it smiled. The train doors hissed open. For him, the end. hospital was never supposed to exist. No records, no official documentation, no name, and yet it stood before her, untouched by time. Erin Carter adjusted her camera lens, focusing on the building's pristine white walls. It wasn't abandoned in the traditional sense. No shattered windows, no graffiti, no signs of neglect. The glass doors at the entrance gleamed under the streetlight's glow, though the hospital had supposedly been shut down for over 40 years. She checked her phone, no signal. Her battery had drained inexplicably fast. Exhaling, she approached. The doors did not automatically slide open as she expected. They were unlocked. The sterile scent of disinfectant filled her lungs as she stepped inside. Silence. The reception desk looked functional, if not for the thin layer of dust on its surface. Faded pamphlets about routine checkups and flu shots lay neatly stacked. Behind the counter, a filing cabinet stood slightly ajar, its contents intact. That's when she saw them. Patient records. The names were unfamiliar at first, but a pattern emerged. No discharge dates. The final entry in each file was always the same. Status, admitted. A cold prickle ran down her spine. Then at the bottom of the drawer she found it. Her name. Carter Erin. Admission date tomorrow. The intercom crackled. Paging Dr. Carter, your next patient has arrived. The air turned thick, oppressive. She turned to leave. Only the glass doors were gone. The entrance now led into a long, fluorescent-lit corridor. And then the machines woke up. The distant beeping of EKG monitors, the steady hum of ventilators, the rhythmic click of a nurse's shoes on linoleum. Erin backed away. The hallway stretched impossibly long, lined with patient rooms, inside each a hospital bed with a dust-covered human-shaped impression, but no bodies. Her breath hitched. She forced herself to move, her shoes squeaking against the sterile floor. The deeper she walked, the more the hospital seemed to breathe. The walls pulsed with a faint rhythmic vibration. The ceiling lights flickered. At the nurse's station, a logbook lay open. A fresh entry gleamed under artificial light. Patient Carter Erin. Status admitted. Disorientation expected. Full integration pending. Her fingers trembled as she flipped to the previous page. The last recorded patient dated 40 years ago. Final status integrated. The intercom whispered again, softer this time. Dr. Carter, report to the main lobby. Your patients are waiting. Her stomach dropped. The hallway shifted around her. The doors realigned themselves. Every exit she tried led her deeper inside. A whisper echoed behind her. She spun. A figure stood at the end of the hall, motionless, dressed in a hospital gown. A patient. But their face wasn't right. It was blank. A void. No eyes. No mouth. Just the faintest imprint of a human form, watching her without watching. Her breath hitched. More appeared. In doorways at the end of the corridors, lining the patient rooms, they were waiting. She ran. Her feet pounded against the linoleum as she burst through a set of swinging doors and into the hospital's main lobby. But it was no longer abandoned. Doctors in white coats hurried past. Nurses wheeled patients on gurneys. Phones rang. The air buzzed with life. Except something was wrong. Every single patient in the waiting room was staring directly at her, unblinking, silent. Her lungs seized. A hand grasped her shoulder. She jerked away. The doctor stood beside her. His ID badge was blank. You're late for rounds, Dr. Carter. Her vision swam. The hospital was changing her. A mirror hung beside the reception desk. Her reflection stared back, but it wasn't her. The woman in the mirror wore a white coat, a doctor's coat. Her face was her own, but subtly wrong. Her eyes darker, her lips thinner. She looked settled, permanent. She tore her gaze away. The patients rose from their seats, not all at once, but in a wave of motion, standing in perfect unison. She ran for the exit. The doors led back to the hallway. Her patient file lay open on a nearby desk. The final line had changed. Status admitted. Permanent staff. The intercom crackled. Paging Dr. Carter. Your next patient is waiting. Her knees buckled. She turned and gasped. The patients now had her face. Identical copies. All of them. A chorus of voices whispered in unison, "Welcome home." The last thing Erin saw before everything went dark was herself, and then the hospital swallowed her whole. The end. James and Laura had always dreamed of owning a Victorian home, the kind with creaky wooden floors, high ceilings, and a history tucked into every corner. When they found the old house on Sycamore Street, it felt like fate. A little weathered, sure, but charming. A place to grow old together. The first few days were spent unpacking, finding room for wedding gifts, and laughing over what shade of blue to paint the bedroom. Then came the exploration. The attic was empty save for cobwebs. The basement, however, was something else entirely. Laura was the first to notice it. A door set into the far wall, one that didn't match the rest. The wood was darker, older. No markings, no handle. Just a tarnished brass key already in the lock. This wasn't on the blueprint, James muttered, running a hand over the wood. Laura hesitated. Maybe we shouldn't. But James was already turning the key. The lock clicked open. Inside was a nursery. The air smelled of dust and something faintly sweet, like baby powder long since faded. A rocking chair sat by the window. A bookshelf lined with old yellowed books. A mobile hung over a white wooden crib, its delicate shape spinning ever so slightly, though the air was still. Laura's breath hitched. The sight felt wrong, familiar, but she couldn't place why. She stepped forward, gripping the crib's edge. Inside, there was only dust. "Whose room is this?" James murmured. Laura didn't answer. She had no answer. That night, they locked the door and went to bed without speaking of it. The next morning, Laura stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes, only to freeze mid-step. There were drawings on the fridge, crayon sketches on white printer paper, held in place by their wedding invitation magnet. A child's work, figures with stick arms and big round heads. A little girl stood between two taller figures, her hands clasped in theirs. Beneath it, in James' handwriting, was a single word: family. Laura turned to James, who was just pouring coffee. "Did you draw this?" He frowned. "No. Why?" She snatched the paper off the fridge and held it up. His face paled. That's my handwriting, but I don't remember doing this." He swallowed hard. "Did you?" Laura shook her head. Neither of them spoke for a long time. That night, Laura woke suddenly. A sound drifted through the dark. Soft, muffled crying. A baby. Her breath came short. James was still asleep beside her, undisturbed. Slowly she sat up. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It was in the house. Heart pounding, she crept down the hall, following the noise. The nursery door was open. She hadn't left it open. James had locked it. Inside, the mobile was spinning. Faster this time. The rocking chair moved slightly, as if someone had just stood from it. And the crib, there was something in the crib. A small figure sitting up, its back turned toward her. Laura's breath caught in her throat. "Mommy." The voice was soft, almost sad. The child turned, revealing a pale face, hollow cheeks, wide, dark eyes. Laura took a step back, her pulse hammering in her ears. "Mommy," the child whispered again. Why did you forget me? Laura staggered backwards, slamming into the hallway wall. When she looked back, the crib was empty. The nursery door swung shut with a deafening slam. James didn't believe her at first. He checked the crib himself. Nothing. No footprints in the dust, no proof. Maybe it was a dream, he said, holding her shaking hands. The night terror. But Laura knew it wasn't a dream. Still, they left the room alone after that. Locked the door again. Chose to ignore it. Until 3 nights later. James was asleep beside her, but Laura lay awake, staring at the ceiling. A feeling crawled through her skin, an unease so deep it made her sick. She sat up and froze. There were crayon drawings all over the bedroom walls, dozens of them, the same child, the same 2 taller figures, the same single word scrawled over and over in James' handwriting, Mommy. A whisper brushed her ear, Mommy. Laura turned sharply. A breath of air, like a giggle, rushed past her face. She bolted from the bed, shaking James awake. It's here, she gasped. It's in the house. James groggily sat up, rubbing his eyes, then stiffened. His gaze fell on the wall, the drawings, the name. His face turned sheet white. Laura, his voice was barely a whisper. I remember now. She stared at him, heart in her throat. I know who she is. His fingers dug into his arms. Laura, I think we had a daughter. Laura's stomach turned to ice. No, she whispered. That's not possible. But as soon as the words left her lips, something inside her broke. Memories flooded her. Flashes. A hospital room. A tiny hand wrapped around her finger. Laughter. A name on a birth certificate. No, they never had a child, except she could see her now. A little girl with dark eyes, reaching for her, calling for her. Mommy, Laura screamed. The next morning, James and Laura ripped apart the basement. They tore at the walls, the floors, searching. There had to be something. Then James found it. Behind the nursery wall, beneath the old wooden floorboards, a tiny skeleton curled into the dust, a name carved into the beam above it. Eleanor. Laura fell to her knees. The memories were clear now. The birth, the laughter, the illness, the panic, and then the forgetting. They had forgotten their own child. The house had taken her. No, something else had. The door to the nursery creaked open behind them. Laura turned, tears streaking her face. In the doorway stood Eleanor, pale, hollow-eyed, smiling softly. Mommy, she said. Laura reached for her, and Eleanor took her hand. The end. Malik didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in long hours, minimum wage, and the sound of his mop sliding across an empty office floor. But not ghosts. That's why, when old man Jerry, the head janitor, warned him about the quiet zone, Malik had just chuckled. You're messing with me. Jerry had scratched his stubbled chin. Believe what you want, kid. Just don't take the elevator to the 7th after midnight. Why? Because if you do, you might not come back. Malik had rolled his eyes. Office workers always had their dumb little superstitions. At his last job, there was a bathroom stall that people swore was cursed. This was no different. But then, just after 12:30 a.m., he heard footsteps above him. He stopped mopping, staring up at the ceiling tiles. The entire building was empty. It was always empty on the night shift. Another footstep, then another. A slow, deliberate walk, like someone pacing back and forth. Malik exhaled sharply. Someone had probably stayed late, that was all. He could even imagine Jerry shaking his head at him. You're really that jumpy, kid. So he grabbed his key card and took the elevator up to the 7th floor. It wasn't empty. The lights were on. The office cubicles were arranged in neat rows, desks covered in papers, stacks of reports, scattered pens. Someone had left a coffee cup sitting on one of the desks, steam still curling from the surface. But the weirdest thing, it wasn't just occupied, it was lived in. Malik could feel it. The faint smell of perfume, the distant hum of a still plugged-in monitor, the warmth lingering in the air, like someone had just stepped out of the room. His radio crackled. "Lick, you there?" It was Jerry. "Yeah, I'm up on 7. Silence. Then Jerry's voice, tight and low. "Malik, get back to the elevator. Right now." A chill ran down Malik's spine. He turned back toward the desk. The monitor was still on. An email was open. "I don't know how long I've been here. Please, if you see this, help me." The email's signature read, Elliot Grayson. Malik's stomach twisted. He knew that name. Elliot had worked here 20 years ago, but he had quit, moved away. Right? He reached out, fingers trembling, and touched the nameplate on the desk. It read, Elliot Grayson, senior employee. The office lights flickered. Somewhere behind him, a chair creaked. Malik spun around. The floor was empty, except now the elevator doors were gone. Malik's pulse hammered in his ears. He bolted for the stairs, shoving open the fire exit door, and stepped right back into the office. The cubicles stretched out before him in endless rows, but now they were full. Employees sat at their desks, typing in perfect mechanical silence. Their faces were blurred, as if Malik was staring at a photograph that had been smudged beyond recognition. His radio crackled again. His own voice spoke. "Malik, don't look at them. Just keep walking." He gasped, jerking his head toward the radio. "Who? What?" The office workers all stopped typing. Their heads turned toward him in perfect unison. Something in his gut screamed, "Run!" He sprinted down the aisle, feet pounding against the carpet, but the desks never ended, stretching out like a maze. The fluorescent lights above buzzed and warped, flickering in and out. His breath came in ragged gasps. He had to find a way out. Then he saw it. A computer monitor flickering at the far end of the room. Not just any monitor. His own. His fingers moved before he could think. He smashed the screen. A loud crack split the air. Sparks flew. The office around him shuddered, as if the whole place had just exhaled. And then, silence. The office was empty again. No desks, no workers, just him, and an elevator door. The elevator dinged. Malik staggered inside, hands shaking as he jabbed at the buttons. The lobby button lit up. He sagged against the wall. The door slid shut. He exhaled, body slumping with relief. Then he saw the reflection. The mirrored walls of the elevator showed his own face, but different, older, worn. The janitor uniform sagged on him like he had been wearing it for decades. His reflection turned to look at him. Malik felt his body go ice cold. The reflection opened its mouth. "You should have listened." The elevator dinged. The door slid open. Malik stepped out onto the 7th floor. The office was exactly as before. The coffee cup still warm, the computer still on. A fresh email blinked on the screen. Malik's fingers trembled as he reached for the keyboard. His breath hitched as he read the words. "I don't know how long I've been here. Please, if you see this, help me." A sound, soft and rustling, echoed behind him. Malik turned. The workers were back, sitting at their desks, typing. Slowly their heads turned toward him, their faces blurred, and Malik realized he never left. The end. Alex rubbed his eyes, exhaustion settling into his bones. The night stretched before him, a vast, yawning void interrupted only by the rhythmic hum of his tires against the pavement. He had been driving for hours, the highway stretching endlessly beneath him. He should have reached the interstate by now. The GPS suggested Highway 84, a shortcut, it claimed, a route that would shave almost 40 minutes off his drive. He had never heard of it, but that didn't matter. He just wanted to get home. The road was empty. No cars ahead, no headlights in the rear view, just a solid black ribbon of asphalt cutting through the thick, looming trees. A creeping unease settled in his chest. The road signs were all blank. No speed limits, no exit signs, not even a mile marker. Just empty, weathered metal, their purpose long since erased. He checked his phone. No service. Strange. His gas gauge blinked. Half a tank. At least he had enough to get through. He shook off his nerves and pressed on. The first signs of wrongness. 20 minutes later, the road hadn't changed. Still no exits, no intersections, no billboards, just trees. The feeling in his gut turned to something heavier. He glanced at the dashboard. His gas had dropped to a quarter tank. His heart lurched. That's not possible. He hadn't been driving long enough to burn through that much fuel. The needle dipped lower as he watched, draining, fast. His pulse quickened. He took his foot off the gas, coasting, hoping to save what little he had left. A few miles ahead, his headlights caught something, a gas station. Relief flooded his chest. The station was small, almost too small, as if it had been abandoned and forgotten for decades. A single neon sign flickered in the window. Open 24 hours. Alex pulled in, gravel crunching beneath his tires. The station was eerily silent. No hum of electricity, no insects chirping in the warm summer air, just silence. The gas station inside, the air smelled stale, like dust and old wood. A man stood behind the counter, his skin pale as wax, his eyes too wide. He didn't blink. Alex hesitated before stepping closer. Can I fill up? The man didn't answer. Alex frowned. Hey, my car's almost out of gas. I just need... You shouldn't be here, the man whispered. Alex felt the air shift, the temperature dropping sharply. What? The attendant's eyes darted to the door. His fingers trembled against the counter. You shouldn't be here. This road is closed. The lights flickered. For a fraction of a second, the store was swallowed in darkness. When the light returned, the man was gone. Alex's stomach dropped. The counter was covered in thick dust. The cash register rusted over. The shelves were coated in grime. The fluorescent lights buzzing weakly. Something wasn't right. His chest tightened. He bolted for the door. Outside, his car was gone. No more road. The highway was missing. In its place was a vast, endless stretch of dirt. No pavement, no yellow lines, just an empty wasteland stretching to the horizon. His breath came in shallow gasps. He spun back toward the station. The neon sign had changed. It no longer said open 24 hours. Now the letters buzzed weakly, flickering between words as if struggling to hold themselves together. Do not enter after midnight. His blood ran cold. A gust of wind kicked up dust, revealing something buried in the dirt. A sign, rusted and bent, peeking up from the ground like a tombstone. He crouched, wiping away the dirt. The letters were barely readable beneath the corrosion. Road no longer exists. A chill crawled up his spine. A sound whispered through the air. Low, guttural. He wasn't alone. The watcher Alex turned slowly. A figure stood in the distance, tall, too tall. Its limbs were elongated, stretched too thin, as if it had been pulled apart and sewn back together in the wrong proportions. It tilted its head, a single step forward, silent but shaking the air. Alex's breath hitched. He staggered back, his heart beat a drum in his ears. The thing moved closer. It wasn't walking, it was just closer. His legs finally obeyed. He ran. The dirt was soft, swallowing his footsteps, making it harder to move. The wind screamed past his ears, carrying whispers that weren't his own. His lungs burned, his vision blurred. Then, the road, pavement. It flickered ahead like a mirage, shimmering in the unnatural darkness. His feet slammed on the asphalt. The air changed. The silence broke. Crickets, wind, distant night sounds rushing in all at once. Alex stumbled to a halt, gasping. The empty wasteland was gone. The gas station was gone. The road stretched behind him, normal once again. His car sat on the shoulder, engine running. His hands trembled as he climbed inside and locked the doors. His phone buzzed. GPS signal restored. The screen displayed his route. Highway 84 was no longer there, just a blank space. He floored the accelerator. As the highway curved behind him, his rearview mirror caught a final glimpse of something at the edge of the pavement. A rusted road sign, barely standing, its last words whispering in the wind. Do not enter after midnight. Alex didn't stop driving until the sun came up. The end. The house had been a bargain, too good to pass up. A sprawling two-story colonial with a wraparound porch nestled at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. The kind of home where a fresh start didn't just seem possible, but inevitable. Maggie stood in the front yard, watching her husband Daniel wrestle a couch through the doorway, while their 7-year-old son Liam darted across the lawn, swinging a plastic sword. It was the kind of bright autumn afternoon that made everything feel crisp and real. A new home, a new chapter. I can't believe we got this place, Daniel said, dropping onto the porch steps, wiping sweat from his brow. Feels like we won the lottery. Maggie smiled. Yeah, almost too good. That night, after unpacking most of the boxes, they settled into their new life. Maggie read Liam a bedtime story. Daniel cracked open a beer, and for the first time in months, the house felt like theirs. No shadows loomed, no eerie sensations, just the hum of the fridge, the creak of settling wood. Everything was perfect. For now, the first oddity was small, barely noticeable. Maggie woke early, padding downstairs in search of coffee. The kitchen felt different, off, but she couldn't place why. Then she noticed the dining chair. It wasn't where she had left it, just slightly out of place, angled toward the window, as if someone had been sitting there, looking out. She frowned but shook it off. Maybe Daniel moved it. Maybe she had. Then later that afternoon, Liam came running down from the attic, his little face pale. Mom, I found something weird, he said, tugging her hand. She followed him up the narrow staircase. Dust hung in the air, swirling in the sunlight filtering through the grimy attic window. There, Liam pointed. A small stack of old photographs lay scattered on the wooden floorboards. Maggie picked one up. It showed a family, a mother, a father, and a child. The faces were blurred, faded with age. But the strangest part, the child wore a striped sweater exactly like Liam's favorite one. The one she had bought him last Christmas. Her stomach twisted. It's just a coincidence, she muttered, forcing a smile. She gathered the photos, shoving them into an old box. Let's go back downstairs. She tried to forget about it. She should have tried harder. The next night, Maggie woke with a start. Silence, too much silence. The house had its usual sounds, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, but something felt missing, a wrongness in the air. Then she noticed it. Liam's bedroom door was gone. Not open, not closed, gone. The wall where it had been was smooth, painted the same dull beige as the rest of the hallway. No frame, no hinges, no sign a door had ever existed. Her breath caught in her throat. A cold, creeping horror slithered through her chest. She reached out, her fingers skimming the wall. Solid, no hidden seams, no tricks of the light. She spun, heart pounding. Daniel, Daniel, wake up. Her husband stumbled out of their room groggy. What is it? Liam's room, it's gone. The door, it's just... She turned back, her voice breaking. Daniel frowned. Liam. He said the name like it was foreign, like it didn't belong in his mouth. Maggie's stomach dropped. Our son Daniel. Liam. He only blinked at her. We don't have a son, Maggie. A chill lanced through her bones. She shoved past him, ran down the hall, but the room wasn't there. Just smooth, featureless wall where her child should have been. Photos, drawings, toys, all gone. Daniel caught her shaking hands. Maggie, who's Liam? Maggie's breath came in short gasps. She tore through the house, ripping open drawers, yanking at cabinets, searching for anything that proved Liam had existed. His bedtime books, his favorite stuffed dinosaur, his sneakers by the door. Nothing. Her hands trembled as she dug through her phone, scrolling frantically. No photos of him. No texts, no school emails, no birthday reminders. Her chest caved in. She ran to the kitchen, grabbed the landline. When did they even install a landline? And dialed 911. My son, she panted. My son is missing. Ma'am, we have no record of a child at your address. The voice was flat, cold, wrong. Maggie's hands shook. That's impossible. He's 7 years old. His name is Liam. Static. A sharp click. The call ended. A creak behind her. Daniel stood in the doorway, staring. She turned slowly, her pulse hammering. His expression was empty. Blank. His voice, when it came, was quiet. Who are you? Maggie staggered back. Daniel. Stop, but he only stepped closer, tilting his head. Have we met? Her throat closed. The house hummed around her, shifting, preparing. It wasn't done yet. Maggie ran. She didn't know where. There were no doors, no windows, just endless smooth walls that shifted and stretched as she moved. The house was swallowing itself, erasing the past, sealing away the proof that she'd ever been here. She fell to her knees, sobbing. Please, she whispered. A rustle. Paper. She looked down. An old newspaper lay beneath her fingers, yellowed and brittle. A headline peeked through the dust. Family disappears. House remains empty. Below it, a grainy black and white photo of the house. This house. Maggie stared. Footsteps behind her, slow, methodical. Daniel's voice soft. Who are you? A shudder ran through the walls. The last thing she saw was the ink on the paper shifting, blurring, her name disappearing. Then, nothing. The house was empty again, waiting for the next family. The end. The first time Ethan saw him, he thought he was looking into a mirror. The man stood in the yard next door, wearing the exact same navy button-up and dark jeans Ethan had thrown on that morning. His posture was identical. Hands in pockets, weight shifted slightly to one side. Even his hair, short and neatly combed, caught the afternoon sun at the same angle. Lisa squeezed his hand. Friendly-looking neighbor, she said. Go introduce yourself. Ethan hesitated, watching as the man lifted a hand and waved, a slow, deliberate wave. Then he turned and walked into his house. Something about it felt wrong. The moving truck beeped as it backed into the driveway. Lisa pulled him toward the front door. Come on, we've got boxes to unload. Ethan nodded, but he kept looking at the house next door. at the closed door, at the windows reflecting the sky like dark, empty eyes. That night while Lisa slept, Ethan stood by the bedroom window, watching. The house next door had its lights off, its interior swallowed by blackness. But the man was there, standing in front of his own window, facing Ethan. And when Ethan lifted a hand, the neighbor did the same. He tried an experiment. He tilted his head slightly to the left. The neighbor mirrored him. He lifted his right arm. The neighbor's right arm rose at the exact same time, same height, same angle. Ethan's throat went dry. It wasn't just imitation, it was precision. The man didn't hesitate, didn't react. He moved in perfect synchronization, like a reflection without the glass. Ethan dropped his arm and stepped back from the window. His heart pounded against his ribs. From across the yard, his double did the same. The next morning, Lisa frowned as she scrolled through her phone. "Hey, when did you go outside?" Ethan paused over his coffee. "What?" "This morning, I woke up around 6 and saw you outside talking to the neighbor." "I wasn't outside." Lisa glanced up. "Yeah, you were. You were in the driveway, just standing there, talking to him." Ethan set his mug down. "Lisa, I was asleep." Her frown deepened, but The doorbell rang. Ethan got up, grateful for the distraction. When he opened the door, no one was there. Just a small cardboard package resting on the welcome mat. No return address. He carried it inside and ripped the tape off. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. 3 sentences. No signature. "Do not speak to him. Do not let him in." Ethan stared at the words. A cold prickle ran down his back. Lisa peered over his shoulder. "What the hell?" Ethan stepped onto the porch, scanning the street. The neighbor's house sat silent, its curtains drawn. He turned back inside and shut the door. That night, Ethan heard something. A voice. His own voice. Lisa lay asleep beside him, breathing softly. The digital clock on the nightstand read 2:14 a.m. Ethan pushed back the covers and stepped toward the window. From the darkened street below, someone whispered his name. "Ethan." He flinched. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside the house. The voice whispered again, closer this time. "Ethan." He turned. Someone stood in the hallway. For a moment, his brain refused to make sense of what he was seeing. The figure stood just at the edge of the bedroom door, watching him with wide, unblinking eyes. The face was his. The clothes were his. The only difference was the smile. It was too wide, too still. Lisa stirred behind him. "Ethan." The thing in the doorway tilted its head. Lisa sat up. She turned on the bedside lamp. "What's wrong?" Ethan turned back. The hallway was empty. By the next morning, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Lisa avoided his eyes. She barely spoke as she made coffee. When she finally broke the silence, her voice was hesitant. "Ethan, I think something's wrong." He exhaled, relieved. "Yeah, I know, that guy next door." She shook her head. "No, you." A chill ran through him. She set her mug down. "You've been off different. I see you standing in weird places, staring, and last night." She trailed off, swallowing. Ethan leaned in. "Lisa, last night I saw him. The neighbor, he was inside." Lisa's face went pale. "Inside," she whispered. A knock at the door. They both turned. Ethan slowly rose from his chair. Lisa grabbed his wrist. "Wait," her voice was barely audible. "We shouldn't." The knock came again, soft, insistent. Ethan approached the door. Lisa watched, gripping the counter. He took a breath, reached for the handle. And then Lisa gasped. "Ethan." He turned to her. Her eyes were wide, her face drained of color. She raised a trembling hand and pointed. "I just let you in." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. From the kitchen doorway way someone stepped into the room. It was him. Same hair, same eyes, same expression. Lisa turned from one to the other, her breathing ragged. The other Ethan smiled. Lisa grabbed a knife from the counter. "Which one of you?" she whispered, voice shaking. The other Ethan stepped forward, still smiling. Lisa turned to Ethan, panic in her eyes. "Say something." Ethan opened his mouth. No sound came out. The imposter was still smiling. Lisa's grip on the knife tightened. She looked back and forth between them, desperate. Ethan felt something shift beneath his skin. His memories, were they his? He looked at Lisa. She wasn't his Lisa. She belonged to the other one. And the house had already decided. Ethan staggered backward. The walls seemed to blur. His reflection in the window didn't move. The other Ethan did. Lisa gasped as the imposter wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. Ethan stumbled toward the door, reaching. His fingers passed through the handle. The world wavered. The last thing he saw was Lisa, holding the other Ethan's hand. The last thing he heard was her voice, soft with relief. "Oh God, Ethan, it's really you." Then, nothing. The end. Marissa woke up to the slow, rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. The air smelled sterile, antiseptic, and something faintly sweet, like the ghost of an old perfume. A fluorescent light flickered overhead. Her limbs felt sluggish, uncooperative, like they were waking up separately from her. She tried to remember how she got here. Nothing. A nurse entered, pausing when she saw Marissa awake. She recovered quickly, forcing a professional smile. "How are we feeling?" "My head hurts," Marissa murmured. Her throat was raw, like she hadn't spoken in days. "That's normal," the nurse said, adjusting her IV. "You were in an accident. You're lucky to be alive." Marissa blinked. What accident? She reached for the memory, but her mind was smooth and empty, like a snowfield before the first footprint. The nurse hesitated. "The doctor will explain everything soon." Marissa nodded numbly, but the unease had already begun, curling in the pit of her stomach like a shadow. The doctor came an hour later. Dr. Holloway, according to the badge clipped to his coat. He was in his 50s, broad-shouldered with sharp blue eyes that never quite met hers. "You've been here for a few days," he said. "There was head trauma, some swelling, but your scans are clear. No permanent damage." Marissa licked her lips. "I don't remember the accident." "That happens," he said smoothly. "Memory loss can be a side effect of trauma." Something about his tone made her uneasy. Too rehearsed. "How did it happen?" she pressed. Dr. Holloway flipped through her chart. "You were found unconscious. There was no ID on you, but paramedics identified you from hospital records." Marissa frowned. No ID, no wallet, no phone. That didn't seem right. She glanced at her wrist, expecting a hospital band. Her name was there, Marissa Leland, but just beneath it in faded ink was something else. A second line, blank, like another name had been there once but had been erased. Her pulse spiked. She met the doctor's gaze. "Why does my chart have two sets of vitals?" Dr. Holloway went still. Marissa hadn't even realized she'd said it until it was out. But the thought had been lurking, just beneath her consciousness, like something glimpsed in a mirror at the wrong angle. She saw it earlier, her chart resting on the counter. Two sets of vitals. One labeled Marissa Leyland, the other blank. Dr. Holloway smiled, but his fingers tightened on the clipboard. "Don't worry about that," he said. "We'll get you home soon." But the way he said it wasn't reassuring. It sounded like a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. That night, Marissa woke to whispers outside her door. She kept still, eyes barely open. Both awake, a woman's voice whispered, a pause. Not for long came the reply. A soft beep as her door unlocked. Marissa snapped her eyes shut, forcing slow, steady breaths as footsteps approached her bed. A shadow loomed over her. A hand, warm and clinical, brushed against her wrist, feeling for a pulse. Another voice, deeper male, sighed. We weren't supposed to wake both of them. A jolt of ice shot through Marissa's spine. They left soon after. She waited a long time before sitting up, her breath shallow and tight. Not for long, both of them. She had to know. She stole a pair of scrubs from the supply closet, slipping into them before creeping into the dim, humming halls. She moved carefully, avoiding the nurse's station, following instinct rather than logic. At the end of the hallway was a door marked restricted, unlocked. Her fingers trembled as she pushed it open. Inside, the air was colder. Machines hummed softly, their green and red lights blinking in the dark. Rows of beds, patients unconscious, hooked to ventilators. And at the very back, herself. Marissa stood frozen, staring down at the body in the hospital bed. Same face, same dark hair, same pale lips, parted slightly as the ventilator breathed for her. A clipboard hung at the foot of the bed. Vitals stable, her breath came too fast, too shallow. 2 sets of vitals, 2 bodies. She lifted a trembling hand and touched the unconscious Marissa's fingers. Ice. Her skin was cold. Marissa, came a voice behind her. She spun, heart hammering. Dr. Holloway stood in the doorway. He sighed. I was hoping you wouldn't find out. Marissa took a step back, the floor too solid, the machines too loud. What? Her voice barely worked. What is this? Dr. Holloway's expression was almost sympathetic. A mistake, he said. You weren't supposed to wake up. Her mouth went dry. Which one? She whispered. He tilted his head. Does it matter? The horror of it sank in. If they had let her wake up in this bed instead of the other one, she would have believed she'd been here all along, and no one would have told her otherwise. Her legs locked, her lungs felt too small. You. She couldn't even find the words. You can't. We have to, he said gently. One body, one person. He stepped closer. You feel it, don't you? The gaps, the missing time. And she did. She remembered waking up, but how many times? She remembered her name, but was it hers? She remembered being Marissa Leyland. But so did the woman in the bed. Something deep in her mind buckled. The lights flickered. For a moment she felt herself, her body somewhere else. Lying in the bed, cold, eyes closed, then standing, warm, awake. 2 minds, 1 existence, a terrible, impossible overlap. Her knees buckled. Dr. Holloway caught her. I'm sorry, he murmured, and she believed that he was. Because how many times had this happened? How many times had Marissa woken up only to be corrected? A syringe pressed into her arm. The cold spread fast. She thought she heard her heart monitor flatline. She thought she heard her own voice, far away, whisper, no, wait. Then, Marissa woke up to the slow, rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. The air smelled sterile. A fluorescent light flickered overhead. Her limbs felt sluggish, like they were waking up separately from her. A nurse entered, pausing when she saw Marissa awake. She smiled. How are we feeling? The end. Liam didn't love the house, but it was cheap, and that mattered more than liking it. His last place had drained his savings, and he wasn't in a position to be picky. So when he found the ad, cozy home for rent, No pets, 1-year lease, low cost. He jumped at it. The landlord barely looked up from his paperwork when Liam arrived to sign. Don't move the mirrors. Liam had frowned at the strange request, but at the time he figured it was some weird landlord quirk. Maybe they were antiques, or maybe the old man was just eccentric. It wasn't a deal breaker. Nothing was a deal breaker at that price. But after 2 weeks in the house, he started noticing things. The mirrors were everywhere. At first that just felt like an aesthetic choice. A little weird, sure, but not sinister. Some homes had mirrored walls. Some people liked the illusion of space. But the angles were off. None of the mirrors were positioned normally. They weren't flat against the walls like they should be. Some were slightly tilted. Some seemed to capture parts of the house that shouldn't be visible. And others, he didn't know how, but they seemed to go deeper than they should. The reflections weren't just bouncing light. They felt like doorways to something else. And then the reflections started lagging. The first time he noticed, he was brushing his teeth. He bent down to spit, wiped his mouth, and straightened. His reflection didn't, just for a second, maybe half a second, but enough. Liam froze, staring at the glass, his own face, expression neutral, the toothpaste foam in the sink, his chest rising and falling. Nothing else happened. Just a trick of the light, he told himself. A weird moment of misalignment in his brain, but then it happened again. And then something worse. One night, standing in front of his bedroom mirror, he saw something behind him. A shadow, indistinct but tall. Standing just outside the doorway. Liam turned fast. Nothing. He turned back. The mirror showed an empty doorway, but he knew what he had seen. His skin prickled, the fine hairs on his arms rising. He barely slept that night. The next morning he avoided the mirrors. Didn't look at them while brushing his teeth. Didn't glance at the ones in the hallway. But avoidance didn't stop anything. Because later, while passing by one of the larger mirrors in the living room, he saw something again. This time he didn't turn around. He forced himself to watch. The figure was there, just beyond the threshold of the room, featureless, still, a silhouette carved from shadow. And then it moved, but only in the reflection. It stepped forward, deliberate, careful. Its body didn't exist in the real world, but in the mirror it was getting closer. Liam's breath hitched. He took a step back, and his reflection didn't. His heart slammed against his ribs. That was enough. He ripped the mirror off the wall. The glass shattered, sharp edges slicing into his fingers. His breathing was ragged, his pulse pounding. But then he saw what was behind it, another mirror, built into the wall. He pressed his fingers along the edges, trying to find a seam, a gap, something, but there was nothing. Just more glass, stretching endlessly back. His hands shook. His blood left smeared fingerprints on the surface. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, a soft, slow breathing. Not his. Liam backed away, his mind screaming at him to leave, to get out. But his feet wouldn't move. He grabbed his phone and called the landlord. The line rang too long before the man answered. Liam whispered, voice trembling, "What the hell is wrong with this house?" The landlord sighed. "You moved them, didn't you?" Liam swallowed. The mirrors. A pause. Then quietly, "Now it knows you can see it." The line clicked dead. Liam stood frozen, his body cold, his skin damp with sweat. Then the mirror behind him shifted. Not his reflection, not a lag, the glass itself. It warped as if something behind it was pressing against it, trying to push through. Liam turned, slow, careful. His reflection was back, but something was wrong. It stood straighter than he did, watched him too closely, and then as Liam's breath came shallow and fast, it smiled. He didn't. He stumbled back. His reflection stayed still, grinning. Then, a knock. Not at the door, not at the windows, from inside the mirror. Liam ran. He grabbed his keys, his shoes, his wallet. He didn't care about anything else. He had to get out. But as he reached the front door, a wave of wrongness swept over him. Something had changed. He turned just a glance, just for a second, and saw his own reflection standing in the hallway mirror, not moving, not smiling, just watching. Then it raised a hand and knocked on the glass. The end. Mira stood in the doorway of her new apartment, shifting the weight of the last moving box on her hip. It wasn't much, just a tiny one-bedroom unit in an older building near campus, but it was hers. The rent was cheap, the location decent, and the previous tenant had left in a hurry, making the place available on short notice. She didn't ask why. The space had a quiet charm. Sunlight from the single window cast long shadows across the beige carpet. The kitchen, small and functional, sat against the right wall with a fridge wedged awkwardly into the corner. The closet in her bedroom was on the left, its wooden door slightly warped. Everything looked right enough, but there was something unsettling about it. Not bad, just a little off. Like walking into a familiar room, only to realize someone had moved all the furniture an inch to the left. She dismissed it as nerves, the side effect of too many late-night horror podcasts. She set down her box and exhaled. This was home now. She just needed time to adjust. Mira settled into a routine. Classes, part-time work, nights spent unwinding with cheap takeout and reruns of old sitcoms. The apartment was fine. A little quiet, a little too quiet. It started small. One morning, she woke up and felt off balance stepping out of bed, like the walls weren't quite where they should be. She brushed it off. Maybe she was groggy. But when she reached for the closet handle, her fingers touched empty air. Her closet was on the other side of the room. She froze, stomach tightening. Had she misremembered? No way. She could still picture last night. Her coat had been hanging right there, not over by the window. Maybe she was just tired. Stress did weird things to the brain. To be sure, she ran a small test. That night, before bed, she set a ceramic cup on the kitchen counter. She made a mental note, right side of the sink, handle facing left. A harmless little experiment. The next morning the cup was gone. She searched everywhere, even checking the trash. Nothing. But when she opened the fridge for milk, her breath caught. The cup sat on the middle shelf, ice cold. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. The handle was still facing left. She hadn't imagined it. Mira barely slept. The next morning her heart pounded as she scanned the apartment. Was anything different? The walls looked the same. The fridge was still in the corner. The closet, no. Her closet door was now on the right wall. She stumbled backward, her breath uneven. No. It was on the left yesterday. It was. Her hands shook as she reached for the door, half expecting it to vanish under her touch. But it slid open easily, revealing her jackets and laundry hamper inside, just as they should be. Nothing had changed except it had. She grabbed her phone and opened the camera app. Proof. She needed proof. She took a picture of the room, making sure to include the closet and furniture. That night, she barely closed her eyes. When she finally drifted off, a strange sound woke her, a deep, low creak, like wood stretching. The air felt thicker. Her chest tightened as she turned her head. The kitchen was gone. Not empty, not dark. Gone. A blank wall stood where it had been. No fridge, no counter, nothing. Like it had never existed. Her stomach flipped. She shot out of bed, heart pounding. The front door. She had to get out. She skidded to a stop. The front door was gone too. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop moving while it's watching. Mira's fingers tightened around her phone. Who sent that message? The air in the apartment felt wrong, dense, pressing. The walls weren't just walls anymore. They were watching. The lights flickered. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from where the kitchen used to be. Her breath hitched. She pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering. The footsteps didn't belong. There was no floor over there anymore, no space. And yet, someone walked. The message, stop moving. Mira squeezed her eyes shut. Don't move. Don't breathe. The flickering light cast jagged shadows across the walls, and in one brief, shuddering moment, she swore she saw a shape. Tall, thin, wrong. It wasn't standing in the apartment. It was the apartment. The walls trembled. The space groaned and shifted, like a body stretching its limbs. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. Her chest ached with the effort of keeping still. The lights flickered again. The steps grew closer. A whisper brushed the edge of her mind, a soundless voice curling through the walls. Her fingers twitched. The room lurched. The room collapsed around her. The walls rippled, stretching, twisting, devouring space itself. The door, the furniture, the floor, folding inward like paper, vanishing into the nothing that pulsed beneath reality. Her phone vibrated again. You moved. Mira gasped. The lights went out. Everything snapped into place. She was standing in her bedroom. The closet was on the left again. The kitchen was back. The door waiting, like nothing had ever changed. But her phone screen still glowed. One last message. It knows you now. The end. Arrival. A room that feels too still. Daniel Carter pulled into the hotel lot, exhausted. The Grayson Hotel stood against the night, an old brick building with a faded neon sign humming weakly. It was the kind of place that felt untouched by time, or maybe abandoned by it. The lobby was dead silent. No other guests checking in, no background music, no sound of distant voices. It made his ears ring with the absence of noise. The concierge stood perfectly still behind the counter. You'll be in room 306, Mr. Carter. He slid an old brass key across the desk. Not a key card. Hesitated. No digital locks. The concierge's thin smile never wavered. We prefer to keep things traditional. And then, just as Daniel turned away, the man added in a voice barely above a whisper, "Don't answer if someone knocks after midnight." Daniel let out a dry laugh. What, is that some kind of hotel folklore? The concierge's expression didn't change. The room smelled of something stale, dust and time, like no fresh air had passed through it in years. The bedspread felt unnaturally stiff. The old wallpaper bulged in spots as if something had once moved beneath it. Daniel ignored it. He set his laptop on the desk, checked his emails, a few invoices to approve, a reminder about his morning flight. His fingers typed mechanically, his brain too tired to process anything. Then his phone screen flickered. The clock blinked to 12 a.m. And then a knock. Soft, repetitive. Daniel glanced at the peephole. The hallway was empty. Another knock. Closer this time. The air in the room felt wrong. He could hear his own breathing growing shallow. Knock, knock, knock. The The door handle twitched. His hands clenched into fists. He stared at the brass key on the nightstand. Traditional. Another knock. Harder now. 12 a.m. Silence. Daniel woke up feeling off balance, like he'd slept too long or too short. The room was wrong. The wallpaper looked faded in a way it hadn't the night before. The bedspread had a fine layer of dust. Shaking it off, he grabbed his things and headed to the front desk. "I'm checking out," he said, sliding his card forward. The concierge slid the same key across the desk. "Welcome, Mr. Carter. Room 306 is ready for you." His stomach twisted. "There's a mistake. I checked out." The concierge's smile stretched wider. "Oh no, sir. Your stay is already covered." His credit card was declined. His phone showed no service. Outside, his rental car was gone. A guest passed by, rolling a suitcase coated in dust. The woman muttered to herself, "I'm leaving tomorrow." Daniel's blood ran cold. By noon, Daniel had tried everything. Walking out the front doors led him right back to the lobby. Calling for help, every number rerouted to the front desk. Asking guests, they all said the same things. "I'm checking out tomorrow." The concierge said, "My stay is covered." Their eyes had the dull glaze of people who'd forgotten how long they'd been here. Panic gripped his throat. He stormed to the front desk. "I need answers. What the hell is this place?" The concierge tilted his head. "Why, it's the Grace and Mr. Carter. You made a reservation." Daniel's hands trembled. He checked his phone again. No service. Back in his room, he stared at the clock on the nightstand. 11:59 p.m. Then, a knock. Desperation clawed at his ribs. He had to find a way out. He waited until the lobby was empty and slipped behind the concierge's desk. There, an old leather-bound ledger. Pages filled with names, dates of check-in, then scratched out, rewritten again and again. Daniel Carter, checked in February 19, checked out, scratched out, checked out, scratched out, checked out, scratched out. There were hundreds of names, no checkout dates. Then a new name scrawled at the bottom, Mr. Carter, February 19th. Behind him a voice, "Checking out so soon." Daniel whirled. The concierge loomed over him, his smile too wide now. Daniel ran through the lobby past the guests with hollow stares. The hallways stretched impossibly long. The doors melted into endless rows. Room 306. His room. The walls breathed as he fumbled the key into the lock. He threw himself inside, slammed the door shut. The clock on the nightstand. 11:59 p.m. A knock at the door. Inside the room. Daniel woke up to morning light. His phone buzzed. An email reminder for his flight. Relief hit him like a drug. He bolted to the lobby. The concierge smiled, waiting. His car keys sat on the counter. His credit card worked. "Thank you for staying at the Grace and Mr. Carter." Daniel forced a nod, grabbed his things. As he passed the lobby mirror, his reflection didn't move. His stomach dropped. He turned back. The concierge held out a brass key. A new guest reached for it. Daniel's lips moved, but the voice wasn't his. "Don't answer if someone knocks after midnight." The end. Hannah almost ignored the phone call. She was done babysitting. Over it. One too many nights in houses that smelled like microwave chicken nuggets and bleach. But the woman on the other end sounded desperate. "Just an hour, please." Her voice cracked on the last word like she'd been crying. Hannah sighed. "Text me the address." 20 minutes later, she pulled up to a house that looked off. Not empty exactly, but hollow. The porch light flickered. No jack-o'-lanterns, even though it was nearly Halloween. The couple met her at the door, jittery and pale. "Peter's upstairs. He's a good boy," the husband said. The wife grabbed Hannah's hands. Her fingers were ice cold. "No matter what happens, don't open the door." And then they were gone. The house felt wrong. Not messy, not dirty, just fake. No family photos, no shoes by the door. A living room set that looked like it had never been sat in. She found Peter in his room, sitting on the edge of his neatly made bed. He was about 7, with wide, unblinking eyes, too still, too quiet. His hands were folded in his lap like he was waiting for something. "Hey, buddy," Hannah said, forcing a smile. "Your parents left in a hurry." Peter nodded but didn't say a word. The only things in his room were notebooks, neatly stacked, filling an entire bookshelf. She grabbed one. The pages were covered in small, careful handwriting. Over and over, the same phrase, "Don't talk to them. Don't let them in." A chill ran up her spine. Peter, who wrote this? Still silent. He just looked at her with those big dark eyes. Downstairs, the grandfather clock chimed. 9 o'clock. And then, the doorbell rang. The sound jerked through the house like a knife through fabric. Hannah's stomach turned. She checked the window. The porch was empty, no car in the driveway, no movement on the street. Then a whisper curling through the wood of the door. "We're here for the boy." A slow, dreadful chill crept up her back. Peter tugged her sleeve, urgent now. "They're early," he whispered. "Don't answer." The door handle rattled hard. Hannah took a step back. "Who is that?" No answer, just more rattling. Then a series of slow, deliberate knocks. She grabbed her phone, no service. Her breath quickened. "Peter, I need you to tell me." A knock at the window. She turned. Nothing there. Just glass. Just blackness. And then something shifted in the reflection. Knock, knock, knock. Peter shook his head violently. "Don't look. Don't talk. They lie." His voice was so small, so terrified. Hannah grabbed his wrist and yanked him behind her. "This was some prank. It wasn't funny. I don't know what's going on, but I'm calling your parents." The lights flickered, and then in the silence, a voice from the other side of the door. Her voice. "Hannah, let me in." She staggered backward. Her own voice had spoken from outside. Her own voice. Peter's grip tightened. They can sound like anyone. Her head swam. This wasn't real. Had to be a trick. A recording. Something. The floorboards creaked behind her. She turned. Peter stood there. And behind him, another Peter. Her breath hitched. 2 identical boys. Same wide eyes. Same pale hands. One of them whispered, "They got in." She stumbled backward. What the hell is this? The first Peter, the one she'd been with all night, shook his head wildly. "They're trying to confuse you." The second Peter stepped forward, his expression blank, cold. "We need to leave," he said, voice flat. The first Peter grabbed her arm. "Don't trust him." Which one was real? The door creaked open on its own. A rush of wind extinguished every light in the house. The second Peter smiled, a thin, knowing smile. "It's time." Something stood in the doorway. Tall, too tall. A shadow, stretching up the walls, head nearly touching the ceiling. Hannah's chest squeezed. She tried to move, but her body was lead. A voice like cracked earth murmured, "You brought her. Good." The second Peter reached for her hand. The first Peter screamed, "Run!" But she couldn't move. She was staring at its face. It wasn't a face. It was a hollow space, a gaping absence where a face should be. A black so deep it felt like her thoughts were being pulled into it. And then the whisper came again, so close it felt like it was curling into her bones. "We chose you. Fight it." The thought burst through the static in her head. She yanked away from the second Peter's grip and lunged for the first. His small, terrified fingers clutched hers. The second Peter let out a shriek that wasn't human. The shadow lurched forward. Hannah bolted for the stairs. The house was wrong now. Doors opened into black voids. Hallways twisted in directions that didn't exist. Peter pulled her toward the basement. We have to hide. No time to argue. She slammed the door shut behind them. Upstairs, something moved through the house, whispering her name. Peter pressed his forehead to the wall. His breath came in shudders. Don't let them take me. She knelt beside him. I won't. Above them, the floor creaked. They weren't alone down here. Hannah turned slowly. The second Peter stood in the corner of the basement, his head tilted, lips curled into a slow, creeping grin. You picked wrong, he whispered. The lights went out. The end. Amelia had been driving for hours, the endless stretch of highway turning into a blur of green and gray. When she spotted a quaint little town nestled between rolling hills, she sighed in relief. The gas station sign flickered weakly, but it was open, and just beyond it, a diner glowed warmly under the dim evening sky. She pulled in, parked, and stretched her aching legs. The town was eerily quiet, but charming in its old-fashioned way. White picket fences, a general store with a hand-painted sign, and a single traffic light swaying lazily in the breeze. Inside the diner, the smell of fresh coffee and grilled food welcomed her. A dozen people sat at the counter and booths, all of them turning to look at her at once. Their smiles came a beat too late. Passing through, the waitress, a woman with soft eyes and a name tag that read Marge, poured her coffee before she even ordered. Yeah, just for the night, Amelia said, stirring sugar into her cup. Long drive ahead. You should stay a little longer, Marge suggested too casually. Just a day or two, a man in overalls added. Amelia laughed politely. I'd love to, but a hand touched her wrist. An old man at the end of the counter, hunched with age, stared at her with watery blue eyes. His fingers were cold. Leave before you forget where you were going, he murmured. A chill slithered down her spine. She pulled away, finishing her coffee in silence. When she asked for the bill, Marge waved her off with a smile. Guests don't pay on their first night. She didn't like how that sounded. The next morning, Amelia stepped outside the small inn and froze. Her car was gone. Panic surged through her as she turned in circles. She was sure she had parked it by the gas station. She ran there, heart pounding, but there was no sign of it. A man sweeping the sidewalk looked up at her. Something wrong. Helen, my car, she gasped. Did you see anyone take it? The man frowned. Car? I don't remember you having one. Her stomach twisted. No, I drove here last night, a blue sedan, right there. He shook his head. Must be mistaken. She rushed to the diner. Marge, you saw me drive in, tell them. Marge's expression flickered, a strange mix of confusion and pity. Sweetheart, you didn't have a car. A laugh bubbled up in Amelia's throat, but it came out strangled. You took my order, I paid for gas. Marge reached for her hand. Why don't you sit down? We'll get you some breakfast. By noon, her phone was useless. No service, no GPS. The general store had no maps, and when she asked for directions out of town, no one could seem to recall which road led where. You just stay put, an old woman said kindly. Things have a way of working themselves out. Amelia didn't want things to work themselves out. She wanted to leave. She wandered aimlessly until she reached a bulletin board outside the post office, cluttered with old flyers. Her breath hitched. A missing person poster stared back at her. Her own face. She staggered back. Amelia Green, missing since 2014. No, that was impossible. She turned to run and collided with someone. A woman, young but hollow-eyed, gripped her shoulders. "Run," she whispered, "before you forget to." The words sent a jagged bolt of fear through her. "Forget what?" Amelia backed away, but the woman's eyes were pleading. "You don't have much time." A shadow loomed behind her. The townspeople were gathering, their faces calm, expectant. Marge stood at the front, her voice soft. "Sweetheart, you look exhausted. You should rest." Amelia took a shaky step back, then another. Then she ran. She didn't care where, just away. She sprinted past houses, past the gas station, past the diner, but the streets twisted in on themselves. No matter which way she turned, she ended up back in town. The people were waiting, smiling. The woman who had warned her was gone. Panic turned to terror. Amelia's breath came in gasps as she pressed her hands to her temples, trying to remember where she had been heading before she stopped in this town. She couldn't. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember. The old man's voice echoed in her skull. "Leave before you forget where you were going." But it was already too late. The town had taken her, and soon she wouldn't even remember why she wanted to leave. The end. James wakes up to the soft gray light filtering through his blinds. He blinks sleep from his eyes, stretching his arms. His room is exactly as he left it, the closet door half closed, the wooden desk pushed against the far wall, the old lamp flickering slightly. The wiring in this apartment is terrible. His phone buzzes. A text from his coworker, reminding him of their early shift. He groans and sits up. That's when he notices it. A window. It's on the wall opposite his bed, where there was nothing before. His breath catches. He rubs his eyes. The window is rectangular, its frame white, clean, and new. But he knows it wasn't there yesterday. His apartment doesn't even have a window on that side. It faces the hallway. His skin prickles, but he exhales sharply. Maybe he's remembering wrong. Maybe he's losing it. He pushes off his blankets and walks toward it. What he sees inside makes his stomach drop. His room, reflected perfectly, but not quite. The bed in the window is unmade. His closet is wide open, and at his desk someone is sitting. Back turned, still, someone who wasn't there when he went to sleep. James doesn't move. His breath is shallow, his pulse thudding in his ears. The figure at the desk doesn't stir, it just sits there, facing away, hands resting on the surface. A prank, a weird, elaborate prank, maybe a mirror trick, some kind of optical illusion. That has to be it. Slowly, James raises a hand. The reflection does not. His stomach clenches. He takes a step closer. The figure remains still. The details of the room and the window are unsettlingly perfect. The faint coffee stain on his desk, the slightly tilted lamp, even the scuff marks on the wooden floor. But his bed is unmade. His closet door open, and he never left them like that. James swallows hard. "Hello." His voice feels ridiculous in the silence. Of course the figure doesn't respond. James hesitates, then knocks lightly on the glass. A dull sound, solid, real. Nothing happens. The figure doesn't move. James exhales, forcing out a small, nervous laugh. His nerves must be shot. Maybe he did leave his closet open. Maybe he's overreacting. He takes one last glance at the unmoving figure, then steps back. His foot catches on the cord of his desk lamp. It topples, clattering loudly onto the floor. James flinches, looking down, and when he looks back up, the figure is standing, facing him, his own face staring back, a perfect copy. It takes a step forward. James stumbles backward, his heartbeat roaring in his ears, and then he hears it. A soft click. His stomach twists. The window is open. James doesn't breathe. The window, no, the thing inside it is open. Just a crack, a sliver of air between this world and whatever is on the other side. His copy stands inches away from the frame. It doesn't blink, doesn't move. James swears he can hear his own heartbeat rattling through his skull. Then, his copy raises a hand. James mirrors the movement instinctively, like looking into a mirror. But this isn't a mirror. He knows that now. A tremor grips his fingers. The copy places its palm flat against the glass. James feels a cold pressure against his own palm, though he hasn't touched anything. The air around him warps like heat shimmering off pavement. A whisper, soft as breath, curls into his ears. "Let me in." James yanks his hand back. The glass is no longer solid. It bends, ripples like water. The window isn't a window anymore, it's a door, and his copy is stepping through. James turns and runs. Behind him, footsteps slap against the floor, fast, urgent. His own footsteps duplicated. James crashes into his bedroom door, fumbling with the knob. His hands are slick with sweat. He yanks it open, his breath catches in his throat. His apartment is gone. Beyond the door is his bedroom, another version, another window, another copy, waiting, smiling. James stumbles back. His mind refuses to make sense of what he's seeing. The door should lead to his apartment, to the hallway, anywhere but this. The room in front of him is identical to his own. Same bed, same desk, same faint coffee stain. But there's a difference. The window in this room is wide open, and his copy is already stepping through. James whirls around ready to bolt, but the first copy is blocking his path. Two of them. Two versions of himself, standing too still, too rigid. One behind him, one in front, smiling. "You let us in." James shakes his head violently. No, I didn't. You saw us. You opened the door." His chest heaves. This isn't happening. This isn't. The second copy reaches for him. James flinches away, heart hammering, but the fingers don't touch his skin. They sink in, like dipping into liquid. James gasps. His hand, it's dissolving into the copy's hand, melting, the boundary between them thinning. The second copy leans in, its face almost touching his. "It's your turn now." James tries to scream, but before the sound leaves his throat, the world folds inward. Darkness swallows him whole. James wakes up. Soft gray light filters through his blinds. His room is exactly as he left it. The closet door half closed. The wooden desk against the far wall. The old lamp flickering slightly. His phone buzzes. A text from his co-worker reminding him of their early shift. He exhales. A bad dream. A terrible, vivid dream. He sits up, and then he sees it. The window, where it's always been. And on the other side, someone is sitting at the desk, their back turned, waiting. The end. The train doors slid shut with a practiced finality, sealing Liam inside. The late-night subway car was nearly empty, save for 4 other passengers. They sat in the same seats they always did, motionless, silent. Liam adjusted his tie, exhausted. Another late shift, another night spent staring at his reflection in the darkened window. He had noticed them before, always there, never acknowledging anything around them. A woman in a beige coat, a man in a suit, his hands folded neatly in his lap. A teenager staring at his phone screen, though it never lit up. An older woman, her eyes fixed on the floor. He had assumed they were just other tired commuters. But something gnawed at him tonight, something he couldn't name. As the train hummed forward, Liam glanced up. The 4 passengers sat perfectly still, their faces blank, their reflections in the window unmoving. A shiver crept up his spine. He turned to the nearest conductor, a middle-aged man in a navy uniform. "Hey," Liam muttered, lowering his voice. "Who are they?" The conductor hesitated, then glanced at the passengers, something unreadable in his expression. "They've been riding for years," he said finally. "No one knows where they got on." Liam let out a short, nervous laugh. "That's a joke, right?" The conductor's gaze flickered toward the reflection in the window. Best not to stare too long. And then he walked away. Liam exhaled slowly. The train continued its rhythmic clatter over the tracks, but something felt wrong. The air was thick, charged with a quiet unease. He looked at them again. No movement, no shift in posture, no blinking. The man in the suit had been holding his hands exactly the same way when Liam boarded. The woman in the beige coat hadn't checked her phone, hadn't adjusted her scarf, hadn't even breathed. His pulse quickened. A test. He coughed loudly. No reaction. He tapped his foot against the metal floor. Nothing. He leaned forward, voice low but firm. "Hey." The woman in the beige coat didn't turn. Neither did the man in the suit. The teenager's phone remained dark. Liam exhaled sharply, rubbing his eyes. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe he was just tired, delirious from overwork. But then, the lights flickered. For the briefest moment, the reflection in the window lagged. Liam blinked. The train continued forward as if nothing had happened. A cold unease settled in his stomach. His reflection was still looking at him. The next night, he boarded again. He wasn't sure why. Maybe he just wanted to prove to himself that he had imagined it. The same 4 passengers were there. Same seats, same postures. He sat near the window, forcing himself to keep his eyes on his phone, scrolling through news articles he wasn't reading. But the weight of their presence pressed against him. Another test. He dropped his briefcase. The heavy thud echoed in the quiet train car. Not one of them flinched. He swallowed hard, fingers gripping his knees. The reflection in the window looked normal. 4 figures seated, unmoving, and yet the reflection of the man in the suit had turned its head. Not in reality, only in the glass. Liam's breath hitched. The face in the reflection was looking directly at him, and it was his own. The train lurched, the lights buzzed, dimming for half a second. The speakers crackled, now arriving at... The voice warped, the station name swallowed by static. The doors hissed open. Liam tried to move, to stand, to step off at his stop. Nothing happened. His muscles remained locked, his hands, his legs frozen in place. He panicked, tried to scream, but no sound came out. The train doors slid shut. The passengers did not move. His own reflection remained seated, still staring back at him. But outside, past the closing doors, past the streaks of movement in the window, he saw himself walking away. His body, not him. A version of him that had stepped off without hesitation. A version that moved freely, adjusted his tie, disappeared into the city. The train continued forward. Liam was still inside. Time passed. How long had he been riding? The stations blurred together. The advertisements on the walls became outdated, warped by time. The windows showed nothing but darkness between stops. The train never stopped long enough for him to move. Outside, through the window, he saw glimpses of a life that was no longer his. His reflection never changed. He sat, unmoving. One night, a new passenger boarded. A young man, weary, adjusting his tie. He looked around, his eyes narrowing at the stillness of the others. Liam felt something stir, a memory. The young man frowned and turned to the conductor. "Hey," he said, "who are they?" The conductor hesitated. "They've been riding for years," he finally replied. "No one knows where they got on." Liam watched as the man turned toward the window, his face reflected back at him. The loop continued, the train kept moving, and the other passengers never left. And Evelyn skimmed over the lease agreement, her eyes darting over the usual legalese. No subletting, no excessive noise after 10 p.m., no pets, and then, nestled between a clause about damage deposits and garbage disposal, a line that made her snort. "Do not open the hall closet after 3:33 a.m. She reread it, waiting for some explanation, maybe a joke, a typo. But there it was, in neat Times New Roman, as if it were as ordinary as the section about parking permits. "Superstitious landlord," she muttered, signing her name at the bottom. The apartment was small but nice, 3rd floor, decent rent, and best of all, hers alone. No more shared kitchens with passive-aggressive notes about dirty dishes. No more tiptoeing around a roommate's awkward late-night hookups. Just silence, just peace. At least that's what she thought. The first time she woke, she thought it was her imagination. The clock on her nightstand glowed 3:33 a.m. A soft click echoed through the quiet. She sat up, rubbing sleep from her eyes, and turned toward the hallway. The closet door was open, just a crack. Her stomach clenched. She didn't remember leaving it open. For a long moment she stared, her breath shallow. The hallway beyond the door was dark, but inside the closet, the darkness was deeper. It looked wrong, like a hole punched in the world. She slipped out of bed, padding across the cold floor. She reached out and, with a quick shove, closed the door. Click. "Faulty latch," she whispered, retreating back under the covers. That's all. She didn't check the time again. The next night, Evelyn woke up sweating. She hadn't dreamed of anything, but her body was rigid, her mind alert. Her alarm clock read 3:32 a.m. She swallowed, heart thudding against her ribs. This time, she refused to look at the closet. She shut her eyes and willed herself to sleep. Click. She went cold. It was softer this time, like something testing the door. A draft brushed across her cheek. She shivered, pulling the blanket up to her chin, and then a whisper, low, breathless, right outside her bedroom. "Come in, Evelyn, it's where you belong." Her body jerked upright. No one was there. The door was open again, just a crack. She bolted out of bed and flipped the hallway light on. The apartment was empty, no signs of forced entry. Nothing out of place except for the closet, yawning open as if waiting. Evelyn clenched her fists and slammed it shut. Then she dragged her bookshelf in front of it. It didn't open again that night, but when she woke up the next morning, the bookshelf was back where it belonged. The closet door was open, just a crack. Evelyn skipped work that day. She spent the morning staring at the closet from across the room, hugging her knees to her chest. Maybe she was sleepwalking. Maybe stress was getting to her. She needed proof. The lease was still in the kitchen drawer where she left it. She unfolded it, searching for the strange clause. It wasn't there. Her breath hitched. The section about the closet was gone, but something else had appeared. At the bottom of the page, just below her signature, was a handwritten note. A note in her handwriting. You already opened it. She dropped the paper like it had burned her. No, she hadn't. She would remember, wouldn't she? Evelyn barricaded the door again, the bookshelf, the coffee table, 2 chairs. If it moved, she would hear it. She went to bed fully clothed, a knife under her pillow. Sleep didn't come easily, but exhaustion won. Then, click. She sat up so fast her vision swam. Something breathed in the hallway. She squeezed the knife handle, forcing herself to look. The closet was open. The furniture hadn't moved. It was just open. And inside was a person. No, not a person. Not exactly. A woman stood in the blackness. She wore Evelyn's pajamas. She had Evelyn's face, but the eyes were wrong. They were deep, empty holes. Come in, Evelyn. The thing smiled her smile. It's where you belong. Evelyn's breath came in ragged gasps. She squeezed the knife so hard her knuckles popped. She wasn't moving. She wasn't going in. The woman inside the closet cocked her head. Then slowly she lifted a hand. Evelyn felt it move. Felt the tug on her muscles, her bones, like strings being pulled. Her legs shifted toward the door. No. She fought it. The harder she resisted, the harder the pull became. Her fingers twitched, her arms jerked. She was losing. It's already yours, the woman whispered. The door, the place inside, the place you left behind. Evelyn let out a sob, because she knew it was true. She had already stepped inside once. That's why the warning disappeared. That's why the lease changed. That's why the closet knew her name. You already opened it. Her body shuddered, her feet dragging her closer. The thing inside held out its hand. Evelyn took it and stepped inside. A week later, the landlord changed the locks. The apartment sat empty for a month before a new tenant moved in. They read through the lease, nodding along until they came across a strange clause. Do not open the hall closet after 3:33 a.m. They laughed, shaking their head. Superstitious landlord. They signed their name at the bottom, and the closet door clicked. The end. Claire Ellis had seen plenty of strange things in her time as a journalist, but Ashwick felt wrong before she even set foot in it. The town wasn't on any major map, just a whisper of a place along a road that shouldn't exist. Her editor had sent her out here after an anonymous tip. Go to Ashwick. No one has died there in 50 years. It was the kind of urban legend that made good copy. A town of eternal life, too good to be true. As she stepped onto Main Street, she noted the silence first. No birds, no wind, just the sound of her own breathing. The townspeople watched her with 2 wide smiles, like they already knew why she was here. She approached an old woman at a fruit stand. I heard Ashwick has a secret, Claire said, notebook in hand. That no one dies here. The woman chuckled, shaking her head. Oh, folks love to tell stories. You'll find we're just like any other town. But Claire had been to plenty of towns. She'd seen hospitals, funeral homes, cemeteries. Ashwick had none of them. That night she met Elias. He sat outside an abandoned gas station, staring into nothing. His arm was twisted backward as if it had been shattered and never set properly. His skin was pale, scarred, stretched over a body that should have collapsed long ago. You're not from here, he murmured. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in years. No, Claire said. Elias turned to her, and that's when she saw his neck, deep scars running across his throat, as though something had tried to cut him open and failed. We don't die, he whispered. just continue? Claire shuddered. She stepped back, but Elias gripped her wrist, too cold, too stiff. Get out, he warned, before it starts. Claire didn't leave. She spent the next day in the town hall combing through old newspapers. No obituaries, no death notices, not a single recorded funeral in 50 years. And then she found it. A brittle yellowed page from the Ashwick Gazette, 1963. An obituary from Mayor Leland Carter, dated 60 years ago. Yet Mayor Carter still ran the town. She had spoken to him that morning. Claire felt a chill roll through her. That night as she walked back to her motel, a woman grabbed her arm. Claire gasped. The woman's jaw was broken, hanging too far to the side, but she still spoke. You need to leave, she rasped, before it takes hold. Claire recoiled, backing away. What happened to you? The woman shook her head violently. You don't understand. You've been here too long already. Then she staggered away, disappearing into the dark. Claire sprinted to her motel, locking the door behind her. That night she dreamed of a town where bodies never stopped moving, even when they should have. The next morning she threw her bags into the trunk. Time to go. She followed the road out of town, but after 20 minutes her stomach lurched. She was back in Ashwick. Claire gripped the wheel, knuckles white. She tried again. Left turn, right turn, straight. Every time she looped back. By the fourth attempt, she was shaking. She stopped at a diner, desperate for normalcy. The waitress poured her coffee, her arm covered in burns that hadn't healed. Claire's breath hitched. They all had wounds, scars that should have faded, bones twisted at odd angles. They were alive, but their bodies were breaking, and none of them cared. She had to know. That night, Claire broke into town hall. Inside, she found a room of records. Folders stacked high, each one a name with a death date that never arrived. Then, footsteps. She turned. Mayor Carter stood in the doorway. You shouldn't be here, Miss Ellis. Claire clutched the folder in her hands. You died in 1963. The mayor smiled, his jaw stretched too wide. My dear, he said, stepping closer. You misunderstand. We don't die, we just persist. He moved toward her, slow, measured. We used to fear it, he continued, his voice a whisper. But now we embrace it. The body may weaken, but the mind, oh, the mind endures. Isn't that beautiful? Claire backed away. This isn't natural, the mayor chuckled. Neither is death. The lights flickered. From the shadows, the townspeople emerged. They were broken, bent, crawling, and they were smiling. You've been here too long, Claire. Her body locked up, a dull ache in her wrist. She looked down. Her fingers were stiff, unmoving. It was already starting. She ran, but the town was already changing her. Her arm wouldn't straighten. Her legs resisted movement. Her breath slowed. At some point she collapsed. She woke up in a house. Her house. She didn't remember moving in. The mirror across the room reflected something wrong. Her left arm twisted back at an unnatural angle, frozen, unhealed. She tried to scream, but only a whisper came out. Outside, the townspeople smiled, waiting. Claire Ellis was one of them now, and she would persist forever. The end. The house had been sitting for decades, forgotten at the end of a long, twisting road, its iron gate rusted shut. Sarah and Ben had called it fate when they found it, a fixer-upper full of history, with tall windows that let the light in just right. We'll make this place beautiful, Sarah had said the first day, standing in the empty living room. They had spent the first few nights in sleeping bags, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, the sound of the house settling keeping them awake. It groaned like an old man turning in his sleep, floors creaking, pipes whispering. Then on the third night, Ben swung his sledgehammer into an old wall in the living room and hit something hollow. "Wait," Sarah said, catching his wrist before he could strike again. That didn't sound right. Ben frowned, pressing his ear against the plaster. The silence stretched. Then, a soft scraping sound. Sarah stepped back. "Ben," something moved. Ben didn't hesitate. He grabbed a crowbar, wedged it into a crack in the wall, and yanked. The drywall crumbled away, revealing something that hadn't been seen in years. A room, perfectly intact. No dust had been disturbed by their demolition, and yet everything inside was covered in a fine layer of time. A wooden rocking chair sat in the corner, its cushions yellowed with age. A bed with an old handmade quilt. A bookshelf lined with brittle-spined novels. Sarah's breath hitched as she turned in a slow circle. Family photos covered the walls, but the faces, blurred, not scratched out, not burned away, just missing. Ben stepped forward cautiously. "This room shouldn't be here." "There's no door," Sarah whispered. "No way in or out." Ben's hands grazed the edge of an old dresser. The air felt thick, as though it had been sealed away for a reason. Then Sarah saw it. A small leather-bound book on the floor near the closet. She picked it up carefully, the cover soft with age. She could barely make out the name written on it. The ink faded. She flipped through pages of careful handwriting, each entry mundane at thoughts, dreams, mentions of people long gone. Then near the end, the words became frantic. October 9th, there are new voices in the house. October 10th, the new owners don't see me yet, but I see them. Sarah turned to the final page. October 12th, they are here. I watched them through the cracks. Her stomach dropped. "Ben, this is dated yesterday." Ben stared at the book, his face pale. "That's not possible." A sound behind them made them freeze, creak. The rocking chair had moved. Ben grabbed Sarah's wrist and pulled her out of the hidden room, his breath sharp. "We are not sleeping here tonight." They barely spoke for the rest of the evening. Sarah kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone standing in the open wall, watching. When they went to bed, she locked the bedroom door behind them, though she knew it wouldn't help. That night she dreamed of movement inside the walls, of soft voices whispering, of blurred faces pressing against the cracks. She woke with a gasp. The room was dark, the air heavy. She turned, expecting to feel Ben beside her, but his side of the bed was cold. "Ben?" No answer. She sat up, her pulse hammering. That was when she saw it. The wedding photo on the wall, the same frame, the same setting, but their faces, gone, smudged away like the ones in the hidden room, and beneath it, scrawled into the wallpaper in jagged, uneven letters, "I see you." Her breath came in quick, shallow gasps. She scrambled out of bed, reaching for the door. Something moved behind her, a whisper in the dark. Sarah turned slowly. In the mirror above the dresser, the reflection of the room was wrong. The walls were not the soft blue they had painted, but the peeling, yellowed wallpaper of the hidden room. The bed was different, the furniture older, and someone was standing behind her. A girl, her face was blurred, shifting, unreadable, but Sarah felt her eyes somehow, watching. She turned, but the room was empty. The reflection, however, was not. The girl lifted her hand and pressed it against the mirror. A whisper crawled through the silence. "You're part of the house now." A sudden, sickening thought hit Sarah. She ran back to the wall they had broken open, but the hidden room, gone. Nothing that solid brick where the opening had been, and the pictures in the living room. Their wedding photo hung among the others now, their faces missing. Ben's voice came from behind her, weak, almost lost. "Sarah, I don't think we should be here." But it was too late. They already were. The end. Jonah first noticed the store on his way home from work, nestled between the laundromat and the coffee shop. A squat, gray building with a flickering neon open sign. That wasn't right. That space had always been empty. He walked this street every evening. He knew it had always been empty. He should have kept walking, but it had been a long day and his stomach was gnawing at him. A quick snack before heading home. That was all. Inside, the air was thick, stale. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly, their glow tinged yellow. The shelves were packed with snacks, canned goods, and toiletries, but something about them was wrong. Jonah walked to the nearest aisle, Hostess Choco dials. He hadn't seen those in years. Crystal Pepsi, a box of sugar smacks instead of honey smacks. Everything looked like it had been stocked 20, maybe 30 years ago, and yet there was no dust. His fingers drifted over the rows of candy, and he plucked a bar from the rack, a brand he didn't recognize, Eclipse Nougat. The packaging was odd, its font slightly off, like it had been designed in a rush. He turned it over, searching for the expiration date. 02/26/2051. The chill started at the base of his spine and climbed up to his throat. That wasn't a misprint. The numbers were bold, deliberate. He glanced toward the cashier. A man, or something close enough, stood behind the counter. Pale, expressionless, with eyes too wide and glassy. He was staring directly at Jonah, and he wasn't blinking. Jonah swallowed hard and put the candy bar back. He turned, ready to leave, to forget this place and its impossible shelves. The door was gone. A pane of window had been there, showing the street outside. The headlights of passing cars, people walking past. Now there was nothing but a blank wall. Jonah turned back to the cashier. The man finally spoke. "You should leave now." Jonah's pulse lurched. "Before the next customer arrives." The words felt like a stone dropping into a deep well. Something in the store changed. The air thickened. A soft squelching sound reached his ears. Jonah's eyes darted to the floor. The tiles were damp, a dark stain spreading outward, seeping through the linoleum. Not water, something thicker, something Jonah didn't want to name. Then he saw the aisle signs. They no longer listed cereal or drinks or snacks. They listed names. Jonah stepped back, bumping into the shelf behind him. His breath hitched in his throat. The next aisle read, Catherine M. The one after that, David P. Jonah L. Jonah's knees nearly buckled. "This isn't real," he whispered. "This can't be real." The buzzing of the lights overhead deepened, turning into something lower, something like breathing. Jonah forced himself to move. His feet slid against the dampness, and for a horrible second, it felt like something curled around his ankle. The door wasn't there, but maybe a back door. He turned toward the aisles, sprinting past the shelves. The store shifted as he moved. Aisles stretched, bending in ways that weren't possible. The products flickered, shimmering like mirages. Aisle after aisle, name after name. Jonah L., Jonah L., Jonah L. His name was on every sign now. Something knocked at the wall outside. 3 soft raps like knuckles against wood. The next customer. Jonah sucked in a sharp breath and bolted, the dampness creeping higher up his legs, soaking his jeans. A door. There had to be a door. He reached the back wall, shoved past a curtain into a storage room. Shelves lined the walls, filled with rotting, unlabeled boxes. The air smelled stale and sour like old pennies. At the far end, a door. He lunged for it, gripping the handle. It twisted beneath his palm like something alive. The knocking came again, louder, closer. He's still inside, a voice right outside. Jonah's chest seized. The handle melted in his grip, turning slick and boneless. He recoiled, stumbling backward. The dampness surged up his legs, reaching his waist. The floor shifted, turning into something soft, something wet, something hungry. The lights flickered again, and Jonah saw. No, he wouldn't look. He couldn't. His heart slammed against his ribs. This wasn't real. This wasn't happening. Jonah squeezed his eyes shut. This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't real. The knocking turned into pounding. The light flickered, and Jonah was outside, standing on the sidewalk. The store was gone. The space between the laundromat and the coffee shop was empty again. Just a narrow alley stuffed with trash bins. His clothes were dry, his hands steady, no dampness, no shifting aisles, no cashier with glassy, unblinking eyes. Had it been a hallucination, a dream? Jonah exhaled, his breath shaking. Then he felt something in his pocket. His fingers curled around paper. He pulled it out, a receipt from a Clips Market. At the bottom, printed in dark, bold letters, paid. Jonah stared. His pulse pounded in his ears. He turned it over. On the back, a message. See you next time. His breath caught. The receipt melted in his hands. The end. Nathan wasn't paranoid. He was sure of that. He had an ordinary life, so ordinary that it bored him. He worked in an office, had a girlfriend named Leah, and lived in a small apartment with flickering lights he kept forgetting to fix. His routine was so predictable that he sometimes felt like a passenger in his own body, watching himself move through days that felt identical. Then the bank called. We just wanted to confirm today's visit, the voice on the phone said. We have your signature here, but Nathan frowned. I haven't been to the bank. A pause. The man on the phone cleared his throat. Well, our cameras say otherwise. The line went dead as Nathan stared at his phone, a static numbness creeping into his chest. It had to be a mistake, a glitch in the system. He forgot about it by the time he went home, but the next day his coworker Alex grinned at him. Hey man, why didn't you say hi at the cafe? Nathan blinked. What? I saw you yesterday at River Street Cafe. You walked right past me. Nathan shook his head. I was home. Alex frowned, then shrugged. Weird. Guess I was mistaken. Nathan tried to laugh it off, but later that night as he lay in bed, his mind wouldn't let it go. Nathan couldn't shake the feeling. The bank, the cafe, two places he hadn't been, two people who swore they had seen him. It gnawed at him like an itch beneath the skin, but he forced himself to move on until Leah panicked. It was late afternoon when he decided to leave work early, surprising her at home. The moment he stepped inside, her face drained of color. Nathan, she whispered. He frowned. Yeah. She took a shaky step back, her phone clutched tightly. But you just left. The words hit him like cold water. His throat tightened. What do you mean? She turned her phone toward him. A photo, taken minutes ago. His stomach lurched. It was him, his face, his coat, his slouching walk, taken outside a store across the city. A glitch, a coincidence, someone who looked like him. That was the only explanation. He grabbed his keys and ran. Nathan's heart hammered as he drove across town. The store in the photo was a small clothing boutique on Briar Lane. He had never been there before, but when he arrived, the cashier's eyes lit up. "Back already," she said. A pulse of nausea ran through him. "No," he forced out, "I've never been here." She frowned. "But you were just—" Nathan turned and walked out, the world pressing in on him. Something was wrong, not just mistaken identities, not just paranoia. Something was watching him, or worse, something was pretending to be him. Nathan barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, his mind replayed Leah's whisper, "You just left." The photo, the boutique, the cashier's certainty. He had to prove this wasn't happening. He had to catch the mistake. So the next morning, he set a trap. Nathan called in sick and stayed home. If someone saw him elsewhere today, it wasn't him. By noon, his phone buzzed. A message from Alex. "Dude, are you messing with me?" Nathan's breath hitched. He typed back, "What?" Alex sent a photo. It was Nathan, sitting outside the River Street Cafe, sipping coffee. The timestamp was 6 minutes ago. Nathan's hands shook as he typed, "That's not me. I'm home." "Then who the hell is?" Nathan jumped to his feet, ran to the mirror. His own face stared back, pale and frantic. "Am I real?" His pulse pounded. If someone else was walking around in his skin, what happened if they saw each other? As if in answer, the front door rattled. Nathan froze. A key slid into the lock. His key. The knob twisted. He turned to the window, heart slamming against his ribs. Outside on the porch, someone stood in his coat, his shoes, his skin. Nathan met his own eyes, and his other self smiled. Then he locked the door from the outside. Nathan lunged for the door, wrenching at the handle. Locked. Outside, the other him stood still, watching, smiling. Nathan pounded on the glass. "Who are you?" The doppelganger tilted its head like a curious dog. Then slowly it reached into its pocket and pulled out a phone. Nathan's phone. Nathan's real phone buzzed in his hand. A text from himself. "Let me in." Nathan's breath came shallow and sharp. He stumbled backward. No, this wasn't possible. The other Nathan raised a hand, pressed his palm flat against the glass. Nathan's own hand twitched, an involuntary pull as if something inside him wanted to reach back. His limbs felt heavy, his breath slowed. The doppelganger's smile widened. Nathan's vision swam, the edges of his world softening. A warm, drowsy familiarity crept into his bones, like sinking into his own reflection. Somewhere far away, a door creaked open. Nathan blinked. He was outside. The cold air bit at his skin. Through the window, inside his own home, he saw himself standing there, smiling. And then, the other Nathan turned away and shut the blinds. Nathan was locked out of his own life. Nathan pounded on the door, on the glass, screaming. But inside, his other self moved easily, comfortably, like he'd always belonged there. Nathan's breath came in ragged gasps. No. This wasn't real. He was Nathan. He was Nathan. His other self didn't even look at him. Nathan fumbled for his phone. Call Leah, call Alex, call anyone. But his screen was dark, dead. Inside, the other Nathan picked up the phone, his phone, and made a call. He laughed, nodded, walked away. Nathan banged on the window one last time. The blinds snapped shut. The world around him stretched, thinned. The streetlights flickered, distant and hollow. Nathan turned. In the reflection of the glass door, his face was already fading. A quiet voice whispered in his head, "You've been replaced." The end. The first thing Sarah noticed was the scratch on the kitchen counter. A jagged little mark, maybe an inch long, just by the sink. They'd made it years ago in their old apartment. Her husband had dropped a knife, and the blade had bitten deep into the cheap laminate. She'd run her fingers over it 100 times, tracing its groove. It was familiar, but it shouldn't have been here. Sarah let out a slow breath. The moving boxes were still half unpacked, the air thick with that weird new house smell. Dust, fresh paint, something slightly chemical beneath it all. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe this was deja vu. She turned away, shaking it off, but then she saw something else. A stain, right by the hallway door, a dark smudge against the white paint. The same stain from their old place, the one that had appeared after she'd knocked over a bottle of soy sauce last year. Her stomach nodded. "Hey, babe." Her husband's voice drifted from the living room. She swallowed. "Yeah, I swear this place is giving me deja vu or something." She turned the corner. He stood there, arms crossed, staring at the bookshelf against the far wall. It was filled exactly the way it had been in their old apartment. Same books, same order, even that gap where she'd meant to buy a missing volume. Sarah's mouth went dry. "We packed all this ourselves, right?" her husband asked. She nodded. "So why does it look like we never moved?" The next morning, Sarah checked the lease. The address was different, the town was different, but the house, the inside of it, was identical. She stood at the front door, staring outside. Her stomach knotted in a way that made her feel slightly sick. Their neighbors waved from across the street. She didn't recognize them. Or rather, she shouldn't have recognized them, but she did. There was old Mrs. Carson watering her garden, just like she always had. Mr. Weaver, the retired postman, sitting on his porch reading a newspaper. A little further down, she saw Mark and Elena walking their dog, the same retriever that had yanked its leash from their hands and run into the street 2 years ago. Sarah's pulse hammered in her throat. "This is wrong," she whispered. "What's wrong?" Her husband appeared behind her, rubbing his eyes. "Look." She gestured outside. "They're our old neighbors." He blinked, looked at her, then back at the street. He frowned. "Babe, they're just..." The doorbell rang. Sarah flinched. A package sat on the doorstep. Plain cardboard. No labels, no markings. She picked it up. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, feeling the weight of something terrible pressing down on her. Inside was a single folded note. It was written in her own handwriting. "You brought it with you." She stopped sleeping. Her husband told her she was overreacting, that it was just her nerves, her stress. But the proof was there. Everywhere. She rearranged furniture, tried to change things. The next morning it was back where it had been. She marked the walls with a pen. The marks vanished. She threw away a lamp. That afternoon it sat in the corner of the living room, right where it used to be. And then there was the notebook. She found it on the kitchen table one morning, pages yellowed, familiar. It was hers, an old journal she hadn't seen in years. She flipped through it, her breath catching as she saw passages she'd written ages ago. But near the end there was an entry she didn't recognize. "If you run, it follows." Sarah's hands shook. She hadn't written that. She hadn't, had she? One night she tried to leave. She grabbed her keys, pulled her husband out the door. "Just drive," she said. "Anywhere. Just get out of here." The car rolled down the street. The houses slid past. Sarah exhaled slowly, forcing herself to breathe. Then her husband made a strangled noise. The street ahead, it looked exactly the same. Mrs. Carson was still in her garden. Mr. Weaver still on his porch. Mark and Alina walked their dog again. Her husband slammed the brakes. He turned to her, face pale. "What the hell?" They tried again. turned down different roads, but the street always led back to itself, like the house, like the walls that refused to be changed, like the past that refused to be left behind. Sarah stopped fighting. Her husband withdrew, barely speaking. He moved like a ghost through their too familiar home. And then, one morning, she woke to a different house. The furniture was gone. The walls were bare. The air smelled of fresh paint and dust. Boxes sat stacked in the corner. They had just moved in. Sarah sat up, throat tight. Had it all been a dream? She walked to the kitchen. Her husband stood there sipping coffee, smiling. "Morning," he said. Her blood ran cold. This had happened before, exactly before. The doorbell rang. Sarah turned slowly, heart hammering. A package sat on the doorstep. She picked it up, hands shaking, opened it. Inside was a note, just one sentence. "Welcome home." Sarah sat down hard on the floor. The paper trembled in her fingers. She turned to look at the kitchen counter, at the scratch by the sink. Her chest tightened, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. She had never left, and she never would. And David slumped into his usual seat near the middle of the bus, letting out a long breath. The night was damp, the kind of city air that clung to his skin, and he was eager to get home. His shift had dragged on longer than expected, and all he wanted was to collapse into bed. The bus doors hissed shut, and the vehicle rumbled forward. Outside, the city streets glowed under flickering streetlights, casting long, uneasy shadows. He barely noticed the other passengers, just a handful of them, scattered throughout the bus. A woman in a dark hoodie sat near the front, staring out the window. An older man in a faded gray coat slumped in his seat across the aisle, hands clasped in his lap. Further back, a teenager with earbuds stared blankly at the floor. David sighed and leaned his head against the window, letting the vibration of the engine lull him into a daze. But as the minutes dragged on, something felt off. He blinked at the window, at the dark streets rolling past. The buildings looked taller, impossibly so, their glass facades stretching toward the sky in warped, twisting angles. Some seemed half-formed, their outlines smudged and flickering like bad reception on an old TV. The street signs were blurred, unreadable, and the bus wasn't stopping. David sat up. The 103 usually made frequent stops along its route, letting passengers off at quiet intersections. But the driver hadn't so much as tapped the brakes. The city outside rolled by in a silent, shifting loop. A sick feeling crept into David's stomach. He turned toward the driver's seat. "Hey, excuse me?" His voice sounded small in the stillness. "I think you missed my stop." No response. The driver sat rigid, staring straight ahead. The dim light overhead cast deep shadows on his face, making it impossible to read his expression. David frowned. "Hello?" Still nothing. Something about the way the driver sat there, unmoving, made David's skin crawl. He glanced around at the other passengers, expecting someone to react, to at least acknowledge that something was wrong. But nobody moved. They sat in eerie stillness, heads slightly bowed, faces unreadable. A low buzzing sound filled David's ears. His fingers twitched. His phone. He yanked it from his pocket and pressed the power button. 3:13 a.m. That couldn't be right. He had boarded the bus at 3:07. The trip home was at least 20 minutes. He checked again. 3:13 a.m. David's pulse quickened. The bus continued moving, the city outside warping, bending. The streets twisted in on themselves, folding into unnatural loops. Neon signs flickered in the dark, displaying words that weren't in any language David recognized. His breath came faster. David turned to the man sitting across the aisle, the older guy in the gray coat. "Hey, do you know where we are?" David asked. His own voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from somewhere else. The man didn't move. David's skin prickled. He looked around at the other passengers, his unease growing. Nobody spoke. Nobody even twitched. They just sat there. His throat felt dry. He licked his lips and pushed himself up. As he took a step forward, every single passenger turned their heads toward him at once. A sharp, synchronized movement. David's breath caught in his throat. Their eyes were wrong, too dark, too deep. And then in perfect unison, they whispered, "Sit down, you're not ready yet." The words slithered into his ears, soft and cold. David's legs went weak. He staggered back, gripping the nearest seat for support. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. Nobody answered. The passengers turned forward again, as if nothing had happened. The bus kept moving. David's mouth went dry, his hands clenched. He turned toward the doors. They were sealed shut, the red emergency exit sign flickering dimly above them. He had to get out. He lunged forward, slamming his fists against the glass. "Let me off." The city outside blurred, its streets melting into endless corridors. The bus turned again, a labyrinth of roads that led nowhere. David spun back to the driver. "Stop the damn bus." The driver didn't move, didn't blink. David's heart pounded. He whirled back toward the passengers, expecting them to be watching him again, but they weren't. They were whispering to themselves now, their heads tilted at unnatural angles, mouths moving in strange, soundless patterns. David's stomach churned. He staggered back into his seat. His phone vibrated. David's breath hitched. He scrambled to check the screen. A new notification. "Unknown number. Do not leave your seat." David's fingers tightened around the phone. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. He looked up. The driver was watching him in the rearview mirror. A slow, deliberate motion. David's stomach twisted. His seat. He had to sit down. His legs trembled as he stepped back toward his row. He lowered himself into the seat, gripping the armrests until his knuckles turned white. The driver turned forward again. The city outside stretched, twisted, darkened. David's phone screen flickered. 3:13 a.m. still, always. David exhaled shakily. The bus kept going, and it never stopped. The end. Mark Wheeler almost deleted the notification without thinking. It was just another fake account trying to add him, probably some bot scraping public profiles. But as his thumb hovered over the screen, he frowned. The name was his, Mark Wheeler. So was the profile picture. Same selfie from 2 years ago, taken outside his old apartment, sun in his eyes, half smile. He clicked on the profile. Bare bones, just his name, his face. No posts, no friends, nothing. Phishing scam, he thought. But why use his name? He ignored it and went on with his night, reheating last night's takeout, scrolling through his feed, half watching a crime doc on Netflix. By the time he crawled into bed, the friend request was forgotten until the next morning. His phone buzzed, too early for work emails. He squinted at the screen. A message. "Why did you ignore me?" His stomach clenched. It was from the fake account. Another ping. A second message. "You shouldn't have done that." He sat up, heart thudding. The next notification wasn't a text. It was a photo of him. Asleep. His brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe someone had broken in. He checked the locks, front door windows, secure. He lived alone. No roommates, no pets. Another message. You look peaceful. Mark felt his pulse hammering as he thumbed through his camera roll. The picture wasn't there. It had been taken, but not on his phone. The fake account was watching him. At work, Mark shut his office door and tried to focus, but his mind kept drifting back to the messages. Maybe a hacker, a prank. Had someone cloned his phone? He checked his security settings, changed all his passwords. A few hours passed. No new messages. At lunch, he barely touched his food. His fingers twitched toward his phone every few minutes. Stop feeding the paranoia, he told himself. It's some bored asshole messing with you. Then his phone vibrated. A new picture. Him at his desk. Right now. A cold shiver slid down his spine. He looked around the office. No one near his door. No one even facing him. The next message came before he could move. You can't see me, but I see you. His laptop screen went black. Then his webcam light flicked on. Mark slammed the lid shut. He felt sweat prickling his skin, breath coming too fast. His phone buzzed. He didn't want to look. He already knew what it would say. Don't close me out. I'm already inside. By the time he got home, Mark had ripped his apartment apart, checked for cameras, covered his laptop webcam with tape, disabled Bluetooth. His paranoia itched at his skin like fiberglass. Still the messages came. Don't ignore me, we need to talk. And then, a video. Hands shaking, he pressed play. The screen filled with a dimly lit bedroom, his bed, himself, sleeping. But the camera wasn't positioned anywhere in his apartment. It was filming from above him. Mark looked up. Nothing, just his ceiling. Blank as always. A new message. Look harder. Mark's breath hitched. He grabbed a chair, climbed up, ran his hands over the ceiling. Smooth, flat, no cracks, no cameras, nothing. His phone buzzed again. He didn't want to look, but he did. It was another video of him. Right now, on the chair, touching the ceiling. Mark dropped the phone like it burned him. His heart was in his throat. His skin felt too tight, like something was pressing against him from the inside. He grabbed his laptop, yanked the battery out, shut off his phone. He wasn't playing this game anymore. For 2 days, silence. Mark didn't check his phone, didn't go near his laptop. He called out of work. He felt himself unraveling. Maybe if he ignored it long enough, it would go away. Then at 3:07 a.m., a sound woke him. His laptop. It had turned on. The screen flickered, a grainy webcam feed filling the display. Mark wasn't in it. The room was empty, but the door behind him, his bedroom door, was slowly creaking open. Something moved in the darkness. Mark grabbed his phone, scrambling to turn it on, to call for help. A message flashed across the screen before he could dial. You let me in. His breath caught. From the laptop speakers, a voice. His voice. You shouldn't have ignored me. The screen glitched. For half a second he saw his own face staring back at him, but the eyes weren't his. They were hollow, empty, like something else had worn his skin for too long and had forgotten how to be him. The lights flickered. Mark turned to run. The last thing he saw before the room went black was himself, standing in the doorway, smiling. The end. The drive had been long but peaceful. The coastal road winding between cliffs and endless stretches of sea. The sun was just beginning to dip into the horizon as Lena and Mark pulled into the small town, the ocean breeze making the car windows rattle. This place is perfect, Lena murmured, stretching her arms. Quiet, just like we wanted. The town had the kind of charm that felt untouched by time. Rows of pastel-colored houses sloped toward the sea, and narrow cobbled streets wove between old shops with sun-bleached signs. The Seaview Hotel stood at the end of the street, its facade worn but welcoming. Mark parked the car, cutting the engine. "Let's check in, then dinner," Lena nodded. They pulled their suitcases from the trunk, the weight of relaxation already settling in. Inside the hotel, the lobby smelled of salt and old wood polish. A soft chime rang as they approached the front desk. A middle-aged receptionist, her uniform neat but slightly faded, looked up, her brows furrowed. "Oh," she said, voice tinged with something like confusion. Lena smiled politely. "We have a reservation, Mark and Lena Carter." The receptionist hesitated. Then slowly, she turned the register toward them. Their names were already written. "Checked in 2 weeks ago." Lena's stomach tightened. "That's not possible," Mark said with a nervous chuckle. "We just got here." The receptionist glanced between them, her expression unreadable. "Sir," she said carefully, "you've been here for 2 weeks." Mark let out a short, awkward laugh. "There's gotta be a mistake." Lena leaned in, heart pounding. Their names were there, written neatly in black ink. "Checked in February 10th. Today was February 24th. "That's not right," she said. "We booked for today." The receptionist didn't argue. Instead, she reached under the desk and slid something across the counter. A key ring, their room number, and another item, a second set of car keys. "We all ready?" Mark started, but the receptionist motioned toward the window. Parked outside next to their car was an identical vehicle. Same color, same model, the same license plate. Lena felt something deep in her chest tighten, a visceral pull of wrongness. "That's not possible," she whispered. The receptionist's voice dropped to something almost gentle. "You should check your room." Mark grabbed Lena's hand and they walked, unsteady, toward the hallway. The floor creaked beneath them. The air smelled faintly of salt and something metallic. Their room was at the end of the corridor. The key fit perfectly. Inside, the room was familiar. The bed was unmade, pillows indented as if someone had just woken up. Suitcases sat by the dresser, not theirs. And on the bedside table, neatly arranged, sat a row of souvenirs. Tiny trinkets from places neither of them had ever visited. Lena's phone buzzed in her pocket, a reflex. She checked her messages. The last one from her sister was dated February 10th. No replies, no updates, nothing for 2 weeks. Lena dropped her phone. The dull thud against the carpet barely registered. Mark stood frozen by the door, staring at the unzipped suitcases. Clothes neatly folded, shoes lined up, none of it familiar. "Whose stuff is this?" he murmured. Lena stepped forward hesitantly. She reached for the dresser, fingers brushing across the trinkets, souvenirs from places they'd never been. A seashell with a date etched into it, a snow globe of a city they'd never visited. One of them had a photo inside. Her breath caught. It was her and Mark, standing on a pier, smiling. The date on the bottom read February 14. She didn't remember this. Mark picked up a sweater from the suitcase. His fingers trembled as he held it up. This is my size." His voice was quiet. "Lena, what if..." A knock at the door. They both jumped, slow, deliberate. Mark took a cautious step forward and opened it just a crack. A hotel staff member stood outside, a young woman, her uniform crisp, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. "You have to leave," she whispered, "before you forget too." Mark opened the door wider, but she was already turning, walking hurriedly down the hall. The floor beneath Lena tilted. The walls seemed to pulse, just for a second, as if breathing. The light overhead flickered. She turned to Mark, voice barely above a whisper. "We need to get out of here." Mark grabbed Lena's wrist. "Now," he whispered. They ran. The hallway seemed longer than before, stretching endlessly as they sprinted toward the lobby. The lights flickered overhead, casting long, warped shadows. The receptionist was gone. The front door stood open. Outside, the streetlights buzzed against the darkening sky. But the town was wrong. The cobbled roads were empty. The pastel-colored houses slumped, as if wilting under an invisible weight. Even the ocean, once shimmering under the sunset, looked stagnant. Their cars sat in the parking lot, both of them, identical, waiting like silent sentinels. Lena didn't hesitate. She yanked the driver's door open, breathless. The keys were in the ignition. She turned them. Nothing. Mark tried the other car. Dead. A movement caught Lena's eye. At the end of the street, in the dim glow of the street lamps, silhouettes stood motionless. Rows of them, unmoving, watching. The people of the town. Mark swore under his breath, "We'll run. We'll find another way out." Lena nodded, heart pounding. They turned toward the road leading out of town, only to see it had vanished. Not blocked, not obscured, just gone, as if the town ended in a wall of endless, suffocating darkness. Lena gripped Mark's hand. Her voice was barely a whisper. "We never left, did we?" A murmur rustled through the silent figures. "Welcome back." Mark squeezed Lena's hand. "We can't stay here." A voice behind them whispered, close to their ears, but from nowhere, "You already have." Lena turned, but the town had shifted. The buildings looked older, weathered by years they hadn't lived. A calendar hung inside the hotel lobby window. March 8th, another 2 weeks lost. Their hearts pounded as the figures stepped closer. Familiar faces. Lena's breath hitched. She recognized them. One of them was her own eyes, hollow, smiling. "Welcome back." The end. Samantha was about to send a client email when her phone rang. Her own number was calling. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. A scam, a glitch, some kind of spoofed number. She knew better than to answer. Every instinct in her body screamed don't, but she swiped the screen anyway. "Hello." A breathless voice, identical to hers, whispered, "Don't let them in." Goosebumps prickled across her skin. "Who is this?" The line clicked dead. A second later, someone knocked at the door. The knock wasn't urgent, not yet. Just 3 slow raps, deliberate, expectant. Samantha's breath hitched. Slowly, she set her phone down and walked to the peephole. Her stomach clenched. Standing outside, staring directly into the peephole, was herself. Samantha stumbled back, hands flying to her mouth. No, this isn't happening." Her phone vibrated. A text message. "You answered, didn't you? Now it's too late." She stood frozen in the dim light of her apartment. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. Samantha's breathing turned shallow. Her eyes flicked back to the peephole, but she didn't dare look again. Her phone vibrated in her palm. Another message. "Don't let me in." Her throat clenched tight as she typed with trembling fingers. "Who are you? What is happening?" The response came instantly. "They watch the ones who answer. Don't look at the peephole anymore." Her breath hitched. "Who watches?" she typed. Dots appeared. Whoever, whatever, was typing back. Another knock. Louder. Samantha bit her lip so hard she tasted blood. Her phone rang again. Unknown number. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She wasn't going to answer. She wasn't. Her thumb moved on its own. She pressed the call to her ear. The breathing on the other end wasn't hers. It was wet, slithering, wrong. A voice crawled through the speaker, low and distorted, the words stretching like something pulled from the depths of a well. "Let us in, Samantha." She hurled the phone across the room. The knocking turned to pounding. The walls felt too close, the air too thick. Her own shadow stretched unnaturally long across the apartment floor. Her mind screamed at her to call someone. Call the police. Call anyone. But who do you call when the thing outside is you? Her phone buzzed again. Shaking, she glanced at the screen. A new message. "Don't turn around." Her blood ran cold. No. The air behind her shifted. A presence. She squeezed her eyes shut, her breath shaking in her chest. Another message came through. "I mean it." Her muscles locked. The apartment was silent. Too silent. The air conditioning had stopped. The hum of the refrigerator had vanished. Even the city noise outside seemed muffled, as though something heavy had settled over everything, smothering it. A creak sounded behind her. Tears burned at the edges of her eyes. Her phone vibrated once more. "Don't answer if I call again." A second later, her number appeared on the screen. Samantha's lungs hitched. She wasn't answering. She wasn't. She let it go to voicemail. The screen flashed one new voicemail. A whisper played from the speaker. "You shouldn't have done that." The TV in the corner flickered, static swallowing the darkened screen. Then, a video feed appeared, the hallway outside. But it wasn't the hallway anymore. It was her apartment, and sitting at the desk, phone in hand, was herself. The world blurred at the edges. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. The lights flickered. Two shadows stretched across the wall. The knocking stopped. The silence stretched thick as tar. Then the door handle turned. Samantha's stomach twisted into a knot. Her muscles refused to move. Her phone buzzed one last time. A text blinked on the cracked screen. "You were never supposed to answer. Now you're in my place." The door swung open, and inside, sitting at the desk, was her apartment. She took a step forward before she could stop herself, drawn in by the stillness, the whispering air. Something was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. There was someone in the chair. A woman. Her. She was staring blankly at the ringing phone, fingers hovering over the screen. Samantha staggered back. No, this wasn't. She turned to run, but the hallway was gone. No door, no walls beyond this one, just the apartment, looping endlessly, the same chair, the same ringing phone. The woman in the chair turned, meeting her gaze with blank, sunken eyes. Samantha opened her mouth to scream, but she was already knocking at the door. The end. Ethan turned the key and stepped into his new house. The air smelled of fresh paint and untouched wood, a reminder that no one had lived here before him. Outside, the neighborhood stretched in perfect rows of identical houses, all built within the last year. Most were still vacant. For now, this place was his alone. He liked the quiet. No cars roaring down the street, no neighbors making noise, just the occasional rustling of trees in the distance. At night, the darkness felt heavier without streetlights. Only the moon illuminated the still, empty roads. He explored the house, opening cabinets, testing the creak of the floors. A new house, but it already felt hollow, like it had been waiting too long for someone to fill it. On his first night, he stood by the window, staring at the row of empty houses across the street. The identical black windows stared back. A for sale sign creaked in the wind, the only movement in the silence. He turned away, telling himself this was what he wanted. The stillness was peaceful. For now. Ethan woke to the distant hum of lawnmowers. His eyes snapped open. He hadn't heard that sound since moving in. He rolled out of bed, feet hitting the cool floor, and pulled back the curtains. The empty street was gone. Cars sat neatly in driveways, glinting in the morning sun. People watered their plants, jogged down the sidewalks, chatted over fences. The smell of fresh-cut grass drifted through the open window. Ethan blinked, heart quickening. Yesterday, this place was deserted. Now it looked like a neighborhood that had been lived in for years. Slowly he stepped outside. A man across the street was trimming his hedges, his movements stiff and mechanical. A woman adjusted a welcome mat in front of her door, smoothing it down in precise practiced strokes. Ethan swallowed. Something was off. The way they moved, too synchronized, too rehearsed. A neighbor waved. Ethan hesitated, then lifted his hand in return. Every single person in sight stopped what they were doing. Slowly, like puppets on invisible strings, they all turned to face him. The world went silent. Ethan's stomach lurched, his fingers trembled at his side. Then, just as suddenly, the moment passed. The neighbors resumed their tasks as if nothing had happened. Ethan stepped backward, his breath unsteady. He turned and rushed inside, locking the door behind him. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, staring out at the street. The houses across from him stood dark and lifeless. No cars in driveways, no porch lights, no people. Gone. His fingers tightened around the curtain. He wasn't imagining this. They had been there. He'd seen them, heard them. A movement caught his eye. At the far end of the street, something shifted in the darkness. A shape too far to make out, too still to be human. His skin prickled. A low creak echoed through his house. Ethan whipped around. The sound came from the front door. He held his breath, heart hammering. Slowly he stepped forward, each footfall barely a whisper on the hardwood floor. He reached the door, pressed his eye to the peephole. Nothing. Then a soft whisper of paper against the floor. He looked down. A folded note had slid under the door. His stomach twisted. With shaking fingers, he picked it up, unfolded it. The handwriting was rushed, uneven, as if written by someone in a hurry. You're the only real one left. Hide before morning. Ethan's breath came fast and shallow. He reread the note, willing the words to change, to make sense. You're the only real one left. Hide before morning. His hands shook. A sudden noise outside, footsteps, heavy, measured, moving up his driveway. Ethan backed away from the door, heart hammering against his ribs. The footsteps stopped right outside, a long silence. Then knock, 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 slow, deliberate. He clamped a hand over his mouth. His mind screamed at him to stay still, but his legs itched to run. The house, once a place of quiet comfort, now felt too open, too vulnerable. Another knock, harder this time. Then a whisper through the keyhole. We know you're in there. Ethan's stomach twisted. He stumbled backward, bumping into the kitchen table. His eyes darted to the back door. He had to hide, or run. But where? His mind raced. The basement? No, too easy to trap him inside. The bedroom closet? No, what if they came in? Outside, the doorknob twisted. He ran, dove behind the couch, pressing himself flat against the floor. His breath was loud in his ears. The front door handle stopped moving. Silence, then a whisper, closer now. Don't make us come find you. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. The door creaked open. Footsteps, soft, careful inside the house. A slow inhale, a voice impossibly close. You should have hidden. Something cold gripped his ankle. Ethan gasped. Darkness swallowed him. Outside, the neighborhood remained still. Houses lined the street, perfect and silent. In the morning, the driveways would be full again, the lawns freshly cut, and somewhere among the rehearsed smiles and synchronized waves, a new neighbor would wake, a stranger in his own home. The end. And that's the end. But the night is far from over. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Tell me, are you still awake? Or did the whispers follow you into your dreams? If sleep won't come just yet, there are plenty more stories waiting for you. Go on, pick another. I'll be here.